There's a motion. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen, or Select Board at your preference, of October 17, 2023. This is a hybrid meeting which requires that the following notice be read into the record. This is to formally advise that as required by General Laws, Chapter 38, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to ending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 17, 2023, at 6 p.m. in the hearing room, Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided below, and that public access is on our website, so that anyone that wants to join remotely can do so by computer or telephone by following those instructions. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is announcements. Do we have any announcements, Mary?
Thank you. Mary Maslowski, Town Clerk. I'll take the opportunity, thank you, to remind everyone that the Town Clerk's office has sent out postcards, which, if you received one, please do not ignore it. It is a notice that you are receiving because you failed to complete your annual census. So if you did receive one, please return it. It is postage prepaid for the return mail. Either send it back to us, sign it, send it back to us, and we will update your voter record accordingly. Secondly, just a friendly reminder that special town meeting is Tuesday, November 7th at 6 p.m. at the new intermediate school on Station Avenue, just as a friendly reminder that it is not being held at Mattakey's. So, thank you.
We're going to have a sign on Mattakey's, Mary, just for those that perhaps didn't hear these announcements and are creatures of habit.
We have already discussed, we will be requesting the signboards go out this week.
Very good.
Now that you're going to be signing the warrant, we'll get the signboards out. We've already requested them from DPW, and I will reach out to fire and police to get the electric signboards posted to notify people around town.
Okay, thank you.
We can certainly put one at Mattakey's to redirect them over to Station Avenue.
Okay. Public comment is next. Vita.
Vita Morris. Well, I wonder which of you had the wonderful idea to invite Julian Sear for a self-promotion appearance here. It was unbelievable. But when he knew that he wouldn't have to be facing the questions from the taxpayers, and he was really it was just really like a campaign appearance, indicating all sorts of things that he was responsible for, and that he approved of and promoted, and he had a patronizing tone to about that the town seems to have rolled over on anything that the state proposed, and such things as the Title V new regulations, and how we dealt with the illegal aliens, I guess, and what have you. And I found the whole thing just very disturbing. So I wonder, he also pretty much ended up by saying that the state will help out with the Title V costs by issuing the tax credits for those who would have to be paying those humongous costs. The problem here in Yarmouth especially is that we have a large senior population, many of whom are not liable to taxes anyway. So thank you for nothing, Julian. And so now I'm just wondering if somebody can get him to come back and for a meeting that would strictly deal with the illegal alien situation, let's say, and take questions from those in attendance. That would be very helpful, I think. And let's see if you can manage that one. That would be wonderful. Now, with regard to the illegal alien situation, I guess, aren't we at the point where, by our town definition, they have already passed the stay, the temporary stay, the word temporary. And so I don't know what is going to be done at that point, but I think we're getting somewhere where we need to consider that it may be necessary to sue the state over this whole thing if they keep telling us that the governor has the right under her emergency declarations to proceed as she has already. She made the most peculiar announcements this morning. Was it this morning or was it yesterday? Just, telling everybody that we were coming to the end of our rope, but she didn't propose any solutions for that or anything. I mean, it's amazing. I can't believe that she did that without giving any indication as to whether she has anything in mind how to deal with this. And as a matter of fact, I believe she may. I know that the legislators are very much against rescinding that sheltering law, which apparently New York City has already done even. And here we have people, totally against it, and maybe even the governor is against it. So they can't even make a simple little, gesture like that. I don't know how much it would help, but at least it would be helpful not to have it. Since we're the only state that has in the whole country that has that law. Anyway, I just think that the time is coming, depending on, I would propose that this board start thinking about having to hire somebody. Obviously, it couldn't be anybody from local law firms or anything like that, because they don't even have the capacity, I think, to help us that way. But we need to go to organizations that have dealt with suing the governments, whether at the state level or the federal government, and start looking into what they might be able to do to help us out in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Mark Smith. My place of employment is 296 Station Ave. I have the distinct pleasure of being the newly hired superintendent for the Dennis Yarmouth School District. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes. I know you all have a busy night, busy agenda, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But I just want to take a couple of minutes to come introduce myself, put a little face with a name, and just give you a little bit about who I am. And again, just come and introduce myself before we get to start working together formally. So a little bit about me. I was born in Orleans, raised in Orleans. I live in Brewster currently. I come from two parents that were born in Orleans and Brewster respectively, and grandparents. My mom's parents were born and raised in Truro and Provincetown.
Just get right to the Mayflower.
What's that?
Just go right to the Mayflower.
Yeah, and my grandmother, born in Orleans, and was actually served as a select board member in Orleans for several years. My grandfather, he was born in New York and lived in New York City, so he was the Washer Shore. But But anyways, the Cape is very important to me. I'm very much invested. I said during my interview process, this job is the marriage of both my professional aspirations and my personal aspirations. I very much believe in the Cape. I love the Cape. It's very deep to me, and I believe in public education. So these two things come together perfectly in this particular job. I'm very much invested in the community, very much invested in public education. So this is like a perfect marriage of those two things. I spent the last 20 plus years working in variety of school districts across the Cape, from furthest away being Bourne and Sandwich, all the way down to Harwich and Monomoy and everywhere in between. My career actually started in Dennis Yarmouth. My first teaching job was at ME Small. So it's actually exciting that it's sort of come full circle for me. And I just want to say that I'm really excited to work together with both towns and communities to support not only the present needs of the school district, but the future needs. I think we have both that dynamic tension of thinking both what is the now, but also what is the future for schooling, because I think schooling plays a key role in our communities. And I know just from my initial conversations with Bob that the town feels that way too. So I'm really excited about that partnership. And I just want to let you know, Bob has my cell phone number, my contact information. So if anybody at any point in time wants to have a one-on-one conversation, wants to know anything about the school side, has any questions, please feel free to use that information to reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a one-on-one conversation with anybody at any time. So thank you. And speaking of those parents, I got to go help them before we lose light, move something into their garage. So I'm going to boogie out of here, but thank you. Again, I look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Point of order, could I ask a question of the superintendent?
Does it have any colons or semicolons in it?
But it has a number that he was quoted in the newspaper as using. I would like him to clarify that.
This is his first time here. I'm going to let him go home unmolested.
I appreciate that. You'd be happy to email me, Vita, and I'd be happy to give you whatever information you'd like.
I don't think you're going to be happy, but
Thank you very much.
all right, thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Thanks for coming in. Anyone else, public comment? All right, we have a licensing hearing. New wine and malt package store alcohol license, Cape Cod Farms, the Roman numeral 3 LLC, doing business as Cape Cod Farms, 601 Route 28, West Yarmouth. And I see that we have our licensing person back, at least for tonight, who was out on important business, maternity leave.
Good to be back.
Great. Thank you. For the record, I'm Paul Tardif. I'm an attorney in Yarmouth Port, and I'm representing Cape Cod Farms 3 LLC, doing business as Cape Cod Farms. They're the applicant for the new wine and malt package store license for the property at 601 Route 28 in West Yarmouth. You'll notice the mobile station on the corner of South C and Route 28. I want to introduce the gentleman sitting to my left. It's Khalil Naum, who's the principal. He's one of the principals of that LLC and is also the proposed manager of the liquor store. You have the application. I believe it's complete and it's accurate. Mr. Naum is a U.S. citizen over the age of 21, no criminal record. He's also a Yarmouth homeowner and has been since 1999, where his kids have gone through some of our school districts. He's very experienced with the service of alcohol, has been very responsible owner at his other locations here on the Cape since 1990. He's tip certified. He met with Sergeant Tom Hennessy on June 15th, 2023, and I believe you have his comments, or at least the checklist that he went through with him. The facility itself is going through a bunch of renovations. As you remember, there was a small store there with gas pumps out front, service station on the left-hand side if you're looking at it from Route 28. The service station's going to be removed. There'll be no more automobile service there at all. That will become part of the store. And they're going to build another section on the right-hand side for a total of about 3,800 square feet of store. The canopy's going to be redone. The building's going to look beautiful. Already been through a few different boards with those plans, and they've been approved and well received. So, and it's also going to be landscaped as well, so there'll be a few more trees appearing over there. So, I think it's all overall a very good project for the town. And I think Mr. Naum's a very good representative, the kind of people we want to have here in town. They're going to spend a little money, improve our properties here along 28, you know, in contrast to what's across the street. I think it's going to be wonderful for the town. So if you have any questions regarding the application, we're here. Mr. Naum is here also to answer any questions you might have about him, and we thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. First thing I'm going to do, which I failed to do, is read the legal notice. Should have done that at the beginning, but I don't suppose it really matters. Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority for the town of Yarmouth, has received an application for a new annual wine and malt package store license from Cape Cod Farms, Roman numeral 3 LLC, DBA Cape Cod Farms, 601 Route 28, West Yarmouth, 02673. Johnny, is it K-Ruse?
Johnny K. Ruse is Mr. Naum's business partner.
Manager. The hearing will be held Tuesday, October 17, 2023, Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth. The Selectmen's meeting begins at 6. Written comments will be accepted till 4:30 Friday, October 13th, 2023, in the Administrator's office at the Town Hall. It can be submitted electronically to publiccomment@yarmouth.ma.us. Did we get any public input on this at all, either way? No? Does anybody in the audience want to be heard in this matter, either for or against? Okay. Now, Bob, is there like a certain number of, or is that just seasonal licenses that are available? This is a just
Annual.
wine,
Beer and wine.
Beer.
malt, as
Malt,
they call
malt.
it, okay? Isn't there a number that we can allocate?
There are 4.
There are 4.
There are 6 allowed. There have been 2 wine and malt. These are the off-premises retail. 2 have been issued, so that remains 4 annual.
We got 4 left before this hearing. Okay, just want to make sure that we were within that
Sure.
parameter. All right, good. Go to the board. Peter, you have questions, comments?
On the certificate of insurance, it shows the town of West Yarmouth. Could that get corrected to the town of Yarmouth, please?
Sure we can.
Otherwise, I think it looks good. I think the cleanup of the property is going to be an asset to the town, and I wish you very much luck in your new business.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Dan?
Welcome. It's nice to meet you. You get your arms crossed. You feel like you're either anxious or
I'm not.
we're a friendly board.
I'm a little nervous. I'm not one of those like go to those meetings and stuff. Usually, I have my nephew who's my partner. He usually goes to all the meeting. I'm on a floor person, like to
Yep.
meet with people and stuff, talk to customers.
We like the business people.
Thank you. And also family person, and usually, but he have some family matters, so he couldn't be here tonight.
Well, we're glad that you're here,
Thank you.
and we're excited about a new business in town and sprucing up 28 a little bit. That's really exciting to us. You know, it's been a overlooked property for a bit. My only questions really have to do with how many stores are you managing?
I'm not managing any of them now. We have like 4 gas stations with convenience store on the Cape.
Yep.
3 of them, 2 in Yarmouth, 1 in Dennis. They are leased. We're not running them ourselves. We have 1 in Hyannis on West Main Street.
Okay.
It's called West Main Gas. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it. It's next to the high school and the
Yes.
elementary
general
school.
idea.
We run a very nice, good business in there. I have my two boys working in there. I leased it to one of my son. So I have my other son who's gonna be running this one here with me. We're gonna be managing it. So me
Okay,
and him.
That's my biggest concern, is that you're on the property.
Me and my son, one of my son, we're gonna be here because the one in Hyannis, we have two of them in there. So I wanna try to, spread them so everyone can hold responsibility. I'm gonna be with him to make sure everything's going smooth and, the way it's supposed to go. And then I might lease it to my son, not to someone else. So he's gonna be running it after me.
Just ensure that he has all the qualifications and certifications he needs as well, but, and that was, my other question was how many licenses we actually had to work with, and it seems to fall within that, so I'm excited to have you with us, and look forward to having a thriving business.
Thank you very much. I
Just watch the, you don't do nips, so you're just doing
No.
wine, and so we don't have to worry about that, so.
Oh, the nip bottles?
Nip bottles. Not your problem, but at any rate, it's nice to have you both here.
Thank you very much.
Mark?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Did you say that you won't be selling nips? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay,
Wait,
thank
'cause
you.
it's just beer and wine. They can't sell liquor.
Very good. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
So, I'm a little bit confused. So who's actually going to be the manager of the store? Your son?
I am.
You are?
I am. My son is gonna help me. We're planning like for whatever it take, a year, 2, 3, for him to be ready to run the store. He knows how to run the store because he's with me. He's been with me for almost 15 years. And with the beer and wine, he don't have experience. So I'm gonna show him all with the good what he's supposed to do. Give him all the experience. And then after that, of course, I'm not gonna leave him. I'm still involved with the one in Hyannis. I go there every day. I help them if they need me because I have nothing else to do.
So in terms of businesses that you're actively involved in, there's one in Hyannis? That's it?
That's it.
What about these other businesses that are located on, that are on the application? Are these just like past involvement?
This is just, I own the property, I lease them to someone, someone run
Any
them.
involvement in liquor store in New Bedford or Springfield or Holyoke or any of those? Did you at one time?
No, not me, that's my nephew.
That's your nephew?
Yes.
Is he still involved in those businesses?
Believe me, I don't know how much involvement he have because he doesn't usually run the business, he leased them also. He leased some of his business.
Okay, and is he involved in this, going to be involved in this business?
And this one here, no, I'm gonna be in there most of the time.
But what,
But Mr. Stone, he is part of the LLC.
LLC,
the nephew is?
yes.
Correct.
Okay, I
He's
guess
li- and he
that's
is
what I
listed in
wanted
the-
to know, all right,
Yeah, he's listed in the application for that reason.
okay. And I see you met with Sergeant Hennessy, right? You went through, you familiar with the local liquor laws and the state laws?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did he tell you about the required alcohol seminar that you have to go to once every 2 years? Did he talk to you about that?
Yes, sir,
Okay. Make sure you go,
of course.
because it's a very good program and it keeps people out of trouble, number one. Number two, if you don't go, it is trouble because it's considered a violation of the local requirements.
Definitely, I'll go like I said, I'm in the gas business also. I go to a seminar like every couple of years. I get involved in there. I see what there is new. If there is any other stuff I need to learn, I learn. I've been in that business for 34 years. So
Might also consider, you're not quite required to do that, but you might want to think about joining the Yarmouth Restaurant Association because they also have an excellent program which they do in late June that is geared to servers and people that are actually dealing with the customers. The one that is run through the police station deals more with owners and managers and upper-level people. So they're really, the other one will show people how to detect the server program, intoxication, fake IDs, a lot of things along those lines. So a lot of towns do stings. They try to catch people. We take the approach. We try to avoid problems by educating people. So that's the only reason why I'm taking the time to
Yeah,
tell you about these. We don't
very good.
I don't want to see people get in trouble with the licenses, especially serving minors and intoxicated people. Those are both serious
Very strict
problems.
on those stuff.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Just two quick
Yeah,
questions.
Dan's has some questions. Go ahead, Dan.
Your son sounds like he's going to be the eventual manager. Is he involved with other stores as well?
He's in with my other son in Hyannis now,
Okay.
but I don't want to keep them both in there. I want to have,
We're looking for hands-on management.
exactly,
Okay, so that's what we're concerned about.
of course, 100%. I'm going to be the one,
Yep.
like I said, until
And you're
2,
training
3
him.
years, 4 years, as much as it takes, until I make sure he's ready for it. And even after that, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to be there all
Nope.
the time.
No,
In Yarmouth, I want something to do. I'm
Great.
not going to stay home.
great. Get involved with our chamber. The only other question I had is there any environmental remediation that has to take place at that site at all?
No.
Okay.
No?
All right. Great.
Did you say the gas station's going to be decommissioned?
No, new pumps, new canopy.
They're still going to be operating?
Oh, sure.
Okay. But the store is going to be expanded?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And it to what, I think you said 3,800 feet?
V8 and
Yeah.
changes.
What is it now?
Now it's around 26, I believe.
Okay. So it'll be enlarged pretty
Yeah,
well.
it's good.
26, 27 now.
All right.
Is this the first time that we've put liquor in a gas station?
Yes.
It's because I've never seen
It
this.
is.
They have it in convenience store, but not,
Yes.
but it's going to be the
We haven't
convenience
done it,
store.
do we? This is really kind of a expansion for us.
New experience.
So you can
Yeah,
drink and
looks
drive.
nice. You can what?
You can drink and drive. Just kidding.
All right.
Any other questions, Peter?
No, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion
Sure, go ahead.
to approve the license,
What's the hearing?
subject to the health department requirements as well.
All right, let's back up. Dan's reminding me. Will you first make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing?
Yes. Motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, can you make your motion now?
Motion to approve the license as presented and subject to the requirements of the health department.
Yeah, would you change that motion to subject to the requirements of, any other compliance with any other requirements of the town?
Yes, yeah.
And I only do that because, just to avoid confusion, I mean, I'm sure he has counsel, so it's not a big deal with him, but a lot of people think that we have jurisdiction over more than the license, that, we can give them relief on building or other types of, or capacity, health issues. We can't. So whatever the building department requires, or the health department requires, or the fire department requires, there's nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. You have to deal with them directly on that.
We've already been to site plan review. They were all there. We've made contact. We have their comments. We know what we
Yeah,
have to do. So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay? So we have a second?
Second
Dan?
on the motion. Don't let us down. This is a new thing for us.
Never. Let's see.
Yeah, Dan's kind of zeroing in on you here, so. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Much, guys. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Paul.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
You're next.
Okay. Vote to approve Old Kings Highway election meeting warrant. We have Mary Maslowski to enlighten us as to the action that we have to take on this matter.
Good evening. It is, as you stated, Mary Maslowski, Town Clerk. It's that time of year again. The Old Kings Highway Historic District holds an annual meeting and an election sometime within the month of November. So I have enclosed a proposed election warrant for that meeting, annual meeting, to be called on the 29th of November at 5 p.m. I'm requesting that again this year you call it to be held in this meeting room. The lighting and the parking and the accessibility is just far superior to any of our other buildings this time of year. There is a motion together with that packet just after your warrant. In addition, I just wanted to mention that the last day to register to vote for the special town meeting is actually Saturday, October 28th. So Town Clerk's office will be open from 9 to 5 on Saturday, October 28th, so that anybody that hasn't registered to vote is welcome to come in and do so in person. You can also register online through the Secretary of State's website, but we'll be open for a special voter registration pursuant to Mass General Law. And then in addition, for the Old Kings Highway, the last day to register to vote to participate in that annual meeting, and again, as a reminder for anyone that's not familiar, is anyone that lives north of Route 6 is eligible to participate in that meeting and vote in that annual election. That last day is Sunday, November 19th. So again, the Town Clerk's office will be open from 9 to 5 on Sunday, November 19th here at Town Hall to welcome anybody that wishes to register to vote that isn't already registered.
Mary, quick question.
Absolutely.
To register to vote for Old Kings Highway, is it separate from your regular
No, it is not.
registration?
A regular voter registration for any election is the same. It's just a matter that you are eligible to vote in that election if you live north of Route 6.
Question? Quick question, Mike.
Yes.
Mary, we're utilizing the new communications director and trying to get this information out.
Yes.
Great.
Anybody have any questions for Mary? Mary, what did you say those hours were going to be for registering for the
9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
9 to 5?
on Saturday, October 28th, and Sunday, November 19th.
Same hours?
Same hours, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
Those are the hours required by the Great and General Court for the last day to register to vote.
Any other questions? Does there somebody want to read the motion?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I hereby move that the Board of Selectmen adopt the warrant for the November 29th, 2023 Old Kings Highway Annual Meeting and Election, and direct the town clerk to have said warrant duly advertised and posted in advance according with the charter and the bylaws of the town of Yarmouth and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I also further move that the Board of Selectmen set the date and time of Monday, November 20th, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. to be the deadline for candidates to obtain nomination papers from the town clerk's office, and Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. is the deadline for candidates to return nomination papers to the town clerk's office for certification to be included on the Old Kings Highway annual meeting ballot.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So that passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
By a 4-0 vote, one member is absent, so we'll set there. The next item is a vote to approve the selection of new vote tabulators.
We were very pleased to have a RFP opening today. We did have a successful response. LHS Associates Incorporated is actually the company that supplied us with the existing AccuVote machines. They were the responsive bidder on replacing those tabulators. I did provide you with a second letter today. It should have been at your table. If you need another copy, I'm happy to provide it.
Yeah, we have the letters. And we have
In your packet, and there
we have a proposed motion too.
should be on the back of your.
Yep, we got it.
You have that, Mark?
Yep.
So this proposal will allow us to replace the election tabulators that we currently use at all of our elections. Those tabulators were last manufactured in 2008. We purchased them in 2011, so they have far exceeded their useful life. This vote tonight will actually allow us to implement them and notify the state in time for the presidential primary in March. We are required to give the state 120 days' notice prior to a presidential primary if we are changing election equipment. So the motion you have before you is under Mass General Law, Chapter 54, Section 34, which actually requests that you discontinue the use of the AccuVote machines and adopt the use of the ImageCast precinct tabulators, which is the new ICP machine.
Anybody have any questions for Mary? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that under pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 54, Section 34, we hereby vote to discontinue the use of the AccuVote optical scan tabulator within the town of Yarmouth and replace the AccuVote optical scan tabulator with the ImageCast Precinct 2 ICP tabulators. The use of the ICP tabulators will commence with the March 5th, 2024 presidential primary and will continue for all subsequent elections held within the town of Yarmouth. And we further direct the town clerk to move forward and take any act or action necessary to complete the purchase of the ICP tabulators.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously, 4-0, one member absent.
Thank you very much.
Mary. Next item is a draft tech memo, Yarmouth Estuarine Water Quality Database. Jeff Colby,
Yes, thank you,
DPW
Mr.
Director.
Chair. Jeff Colby, Public Works Director. Just want to say a couple of introductory comments here. For a long time, we've had concerns with the water quality in Yarmouth, and because of that, we've had a long-term monitoring program, and we've had a great partner with SMAST over at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth School in order to keep those records and help us to quantify the issues we have with water quality. So we've asked them to come back tonight to do an update on the water quality. This is a very important process in that we are embarking on a very major wastewater project, so we want to know what the water quality is currently, and as we make progress in that wastewater collection system and treatment program, how that's going to improve over time. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Ed Eichner from SMAS to give us an update on our current water quality.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a brief comment?
Sure.
For the folks that are watching at home, I just want to remind folks that this has been a priority topic for the Board of Selectmen, and that we have talked about having more frequent discussions with our partners at SMAST to really sort of keep up to date with the water quality conditions in Yarmouth. So I think it's great that we have Ed here tonight. Ed's very familiar with the Cape and very familiar with Yarmouth, and I'm looking forward to this presentation tonight. It's something that I hope we can repeat on a more regular basis going forward.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So I'm Ed Eichner. I'm a principal at TMDL Solutions. I'm also an adjunct professor at
You want to come up front, Ed?
whichever you would
I
prefer.
think it'd be better.
All right.
You'd be closer to the screen, plus you can sit down, you don't have to stand there.
So the tech memo that you have basically runs through the water quality, just as Jeff said, for Parkers River and Lewis Bay, and gives you a sense of how it has changed since we did the original Massachusetts Estuaries project assessments of those systems, and sort of where it's going based on the trends that we've looked at. So Lewis Bay, of course, is split between the town of Yarmouth and the town of Barnstable. Parker's River is completely within the town of Yarmouth. We also previously did a look at the Bass River. I'm not going to talk about that today, but we did that, that looked at the water quality for the town of Dennis. There's a tech memo that looks at that water quality too. So just to give you a starting point, there are 5 stations in Parker's River. When we did the MEP assessment, we looked at data from 2002 through 2008. Post-MEP data collection started in 2012, and then we have it through 2021. Lewis Bay, on the other hand, 13 stations, so more than twice as many as Parker's River. MEP assessment used the water quality data from 2001 to 2006, and then it has had continuous readings since that time. So when we went through and we did the Massachusetts Estuaries Project assessments, basically we found that both systems are impaired. And we went through and we characterized those impairments. There's different impairments in different portions of the system. Those impairments involve things like loss of eelgrass, low dissolved oxygen. We looked at what animals are living in the sediments, the benthos. So we looked at all of that information. We came up with target concentrations to get to unimpaired conditions. So that's part of what's included in the MEP. So in Parker's River, it's between the 2 monitoring stations, PR2 and PR3, 0.42 milligrams per liter total nitrogen. In Lewis Bay, it's the station that's in what I call East Lewis Bay. It's in the Yarmouth portion of the system, and it's 0.38. There's a difference between those two because that's part of what the MEP went through and did. It looked at each of these systems individually, characterized them, figured out what was acceptable within each of the individual systems. So each of these systems has then, those MEP reports were then turned into TMDLs, for total maximum daily loads. Those are documents, regulatory documents that DEP and EPA approve. They're the guidance for as you go through your CWMP. That's the information, the baseline information that is being used. So when we went through and gathered together all of your recent data, we said, okay, we have the MEP information, the period that was looked at, and then we looked at the most recent information that was available, so we had a comparison, see where you are at this point. For Parker's River, the lower portion of the river actually has seen improvements. Seine Pond, no improvement. So it's pretty much the same. That impairment is pretty much the same as it was during the MEP. The improvements that you see down here, they're actually significant decreases in the total nitrogen concentrations. And based on looking at the information, it's in large part, we think, from dredging the inlet. It's not the bridge. I've heard a lot of discussions, oh, it's the bridge improvements. If there were improvements because of the bridge improvements, those would be up in Seine Pond. Lewis Pond over here actually has seen nitrogen concentrations drop below what we said was an acceptable target. So Lewis Pond actually has met its target at this point. The others are still above where we said was acceptable in terms of what was going on with the MEP. We went through and we did trend analysis based on the whole data set that's available. Let's look at and see what has happened the lower portions of the system actually have statistically significant downward trends. Those concentrations have been decreasing since the MEP was originally done. This is sort of a take-home in terms of overall looking at management and looking at targets for these things. There are other things that you can do other than wastewater. If you improve the flushing, that can lower the concentrations, and you should get back to some sort of acceptable situation. These are right out of the report. This is the trend line for actually Lewis Pond over here, PR4. And you can see the blue dots are the individual data points of total nitrogen concentrations. This green line is the threshold, and you can see that it's dropped down below that threshold. By comparison, PR2, which is up near Route 28, hasn't gotten down to that threshold. So Lewis Bay is actually in worse condition than what it was when we did the MEP. We went through and we did the same sort of thing. We have the MEP concentrations at all of the various stations. We have the average concentrations from 2016 to 2021. Anywhere you see a red triangle, that's the concentration went up. There were a couple of spots where it went down. Hyannis Inner Harbor, the innermost station at Hyannis Inner Harbor actually went down. That was a good thing. The concentration went down. But the other station actually went up. So at this point, it's still above its TMDL, but there has been some improvement. And in that improvement, in large part, is because of sewering that occurred since we did the MEP assessment. Stewart's Creek, which is sort of outside of the Lewis Bay system, actually also saw a decrease in concentration, and in large part, that was an inlet situation too. They expanded the inlet to that small creek system. They got better flushing, the concentrations went down. But most of everything else went up, including at the Sentinel station, which is BY3. It didn't go up by a lot, but it did go up. It did get worse. And we went through and we did the same sort of trend analysis. This is actually that Sentinel station. You can see it's not a very steep increase, but it is going up. And we saw significant, these are statistically significant. Snows Creek, Stewart's Creek went down. Lewis Bay Middle, which is out here, so it's reflective, the whole system actually saw an increase, and it sees a statistically significant increasing trend. So my take home from this in terms of your baseline, things have gotten a little bit worse. But you're moving forward with the things that you're talking about in terms of implementing your CWMP. So overall, Parkers River, lower portion, has gotten a little bit better, decreases in total nitrogen. Lewis Pond is actually below what the target was, excuse me, for the MEP. It's likely due to the inlet dredging that went on. The lower river overall, though, is still impaired. You're still above your TMDLs in terms of total nitrogen. There's no change in Seine Pond. Lewis Bay, overall, has gotten worse. Pretty much most of your nitrogen concentrations have gone up. The Sentinel station has gone up as well. So that's pretty much it in terms of what we were asked to do. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to tackle them now.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks again, Ed. This is great. I'm curious, if, in terms of doing future meetings and samplings, is this something that works better? I mean, are you doing samplings every 3 months, 4 months? What's the interval?
So the samplings that you've seen up
Yes.
here, they're all summer sampling, because that's your management
Right.
time, and typically you do a couple times a month.
Okay.
So it's
they're-
not particularly arduous
Okay, so we're doing a couple of samples a month, every month
during the summer.
during the summer, and then do we sampling in the fall, the winter, or is it just focused principally in the summer?
It's principally focused in the summer because that's your primary management time that you want to
No,
look
I
at.
understand that, and I understand there's also limitations on resources and stuff like. Is from I guess from a scientific point of view, would there be any value in doing sampling in the winter months?
I mean, science being science, and you're curious about what things might be going on and what sort of processes are turned off and turned on in the colder. Sure, that'd be be interesting, but in large part, what we're talking about is sort of trying to meet within the regulatory realm.
Right.
Let's make this acceptable water quality that meets state water quality standards and all the regulations.
Yeah, I raised the question because I think there's a perception among many in the community that the problems are really bad in the summer and things improve significantly in the winter, and I'm not necessarily sure that's the case.
Well, since the ecosystem is going to sort of gear down, water quality is going to get better during the winter time. When it is warmer, there's more phytoplankton. That's going to make the water greener. It's going to make it less clear. You're going to see the same things in your freshwater ponds.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the situation.
Now, in the situation in Seine Pond, for example, can we assume that over time things might improve with the flushing that we have? I mean, a lot of money was spent on making improvements to that bridge and opening it up and creating a much wider. Can we say that the verdict hasn't yet come in on that, or we pretty much have enough information to gauge at this point?
All of this just basically looks at what's in the water column.
Right.
When we went through and we did the MEP, we were looking at what was going on with continuous dissolved. There was a lot more data collection that was thrown at trying to establish what was going on with the ecosystem. This is an indication. What you've got going out and doing the water quality samples during the summertime, that gives you some indication. It doesn't give you the overall big picture.
I see.
Now, whether you are headed in the right direction, this data doesn't say that at this point. It would probably take a couple more years of looking at this kind of data to say, was that a good thing for St. Pond or not?
And just to refresh my memory, how many years have we been doing data collection, sampling?
The data collection, I think, goes back to about 2001.
Got it.
So.
And I think obviously the other takeaway is with respect to the Lewis Pond, I believe.
Yeah.
The dredging clearly has had a real. That's kind of a no-brainer. The dredging has had a significantly beneficial.
Right. Well, so when you go through and you open up
that area,
create more tidal flushing, you're going to get lower concentrations because the tide is going to flush out a greater volume of water. That impact obviously only goes a certain extent into the system.
There's been some discussion about the need for more dredging in the river further upstream, right on the south side of the bridge. Is it conceivable that if that area were improved and more flushing occurred up there, that could eventually lead into an improvement?
It's always a tough call in terms of doing interior dredging within the interior of an estuary because you're actually creating a greater volume. And so the tide, if the inlet stays the same and the cross-section at the inlet stays the same, there's only a certain amount of water that can come in and out. So if you create a greater volume, say you deepen Seine Pond, let's say, there's only so much water that's going to get up there.
Right.
That nitrogen is going to stay in that pond longer.
Got it.
That's going to have greater impact, probably. But it's always something to sort of try to use and evaluate based on the data that you collect potentially in this system. You have, one of the wonderful things about the MEP is you have these models. You can use them to play what-if games. What if we deepened it in this portion?
Right.
What would be the impact on the water quality?
Yeah, the reason why I focus on the dredging a lot is I think that dredging may be a tool that we might want to look at a little bit more expansively at some point down the future. I'm not saying that's a conclusion that I've reached, but I just think that it's good to start having these conversations and get this kind of update on what's going on. Clearly, the takeaway from all of this is that the work that we need to do, we need to continue to sustain our momentum on our overall program, because it's showing that that this problem's not going away. It's, if in any cases, with a few exceptions, the situation's getting worse.
Right.
And I think that's the message here tonight. And I think that this is a message that the town needs to hear. We need to. That's why I think these updates are very helpful, because people want to know what the conditions are, how serious things are, and we need to get that information out, not just to us, but to be able to share it with folks in the community that we talk to on a regular basis that want to know how our program is doing. Clearly there's a desire for us to sustain momentum on it. But I do think it's important for us to be able to say that we've seen the data, we've seen the information, we see the water quality information, and it's not a pretty picture. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Yeah, I agree. The information's very helpful, very good, troubling, not unexpected, right? I guess my biggest question is, how does this inform next steps? Is this information capable of being utilized to help this town take more positive steps to alleviate some of the trends that we're seeing?
Well, in a lot of ways, this is providing you with an updated baseline, where you are. I think what Mark was saying about reinforcing where you're headed at this point. At some point in the future, you're going to implement things that you've got on your plate right now. At some point in the future, you're going to have to try to reconcile that with what actually is measured in the system, to say, go back to the regulatory powers that be and say, we think we're there. It looks like the system is okay. What do you think? Are we okay? Have we met our TMDL? Have we gotten to where we want to be? I think that's sort of the important thing that the water quality collection provides you with, and is a positive sort of feedback, because ultimately you're going to have to go in front of those regulators and say, well, here's our information. We know what we know. Can you give us our approval?
One of my own concerns is that those numbers seem to shift sometimes unexpectedly. So when we're shooting for a target, the target moves. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. So
Well, that's also nature. I mean,
yeah.
nature does it. It's not engineered systems. It's going to be bouncing around.
Thank you very much for the work and presentation.
Sure.
Peter?
Mr. Eigner, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I didn't see any testing for 22 and 23. Have they been done and just not tabulated yet?
Given the timing of where we were in terms of getting this project going and everything else, 22 and 23 have, as far as I know, have been done. They weren't incorporated into this in large part because they just weren't available when we started to do this analysis.
So eventually, they will be included?
It would be, I mean, in large part, if the town continues to go down the path that they will.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. But, I mean, one of the things that you have, one of the things that comes out of this, in addition to this technical memorandum, is you have all of the data. You have the database now. You can add to it. And then at some point, like most communities, they get the database, they add to it as they go along. At some point down the road, they go back and they say, okay, have things changed? Do we have a point of comparison to be able to say, okay, this was our new baseline, have things changed since then?
So the testing wells or testing the water column, those are still physically there, or they get pulled out every year?
Those are just sites where
Just
somebody
sites.
goes out and
Okay.
collects a sample of water, and then the sample goes off to the laboratory, and they assay that for the various parameters.
You talked about additional flushing, both in Parkers River and in Lewis Bay. Will this negatively affect the sound if we're pushing a ton of nitrogen into the sound, or has that even been looked at?
I don't think that has been looked at in any meaningful way, but you think of the sound as most of the impacts that you're going to see, most of the ecological impacts that you're going to see are towards the inland, because those are the areas where the tides don't move quite as efficiently, and the water gets hung up within different portions of the system. You go out into the Vineyard Sound or whatever, that water is gone, the next day, so it doesn't have the same sort of impact.
Next, and probably last question. Since the bridge has been put in on Parkers River, have they tested the oxygen that's dissolved in the water? Because we have not had a big fish kill since that outlet was opened, and a few years before that we had a major fish kill because there was just no oxygen in the water at all, or none, or very little.
Right. Well, I mean, that's part of the regular testing that goes on. When somebody goes out and they collect a sample, they're out there, they collect dissolved oxygen readings, they're also going to collect temperature readings, and they're going to collect clarity. So they're going to get an idea of some of the physical characteristics that are there. So dissolved oxygen would definitely be one thing, but typically when you have a fish kill, that is a short-term kind of condition that you're unlikely to catch if you're just going out there a couple times a month. That's one of the things that we tried to do when we did the estuaries project, was we set out continuous meters that would collect readings every 15 minutes so that you have a good sense of what's going on. And we have some places, when we've had those in place, we've been able to see that there's been drastic drops in dissolved oxygen. Thankfully, no fish kills, but we really do see those drops.
Well, again, thank you very much. It's great information. It's good to have a baseline, especially a baseline that goes back 20 plus years. And again, we've seen dredging has improved things, and you've indicated that the sewering that the town of Barnstable has done has improved a little bit of Lewis Bay, though not a great deal. It's great information, and yes, I agree with Selectman Forrest that it would be like to see you more often than not. Again, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. I really appreciate the clarity of the presentation and the thoroughness of it, and I don't know if you have any concluding remarks you would like to make.
I think one of the things that a lot of this, I've done this for a lot of the communities on the Cape. We go through, we gather a lot of water quality information. One of the things that I think is really important is to go back occasionally, not frequently, not every year, but occasionally go back and check and see, how are you doing? How are things changing? Because that kind of feedback is going to be useful not only in the public discussions phase, but also in the discussions with regulators and the implementation of your CWMP. We have seen in some places, I just did a talk a couple weeks ago in Falmouth, where they have essentially sewered the whole watershed around a pond. But they haven't seen any improvements yet. And so one of the questions was why? And it really was about the groundwater travel time. It just hasn't gotten there. Those benefits, the groundwater there is moving, I think it was like a quarter of a foot every year. It was really, really slow. So they just haven't seen the benefits of it. So coming to that understanding is important for the public to get their feedback about, oh, well, we've made all this investment in wastewater. Is it successful? If it isn't, if we're not seeing the impacts, why is that?
Yeah.
And all that data is there to help back all that information up and give you the insights.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why it's helpful for us to have this discussion on a regular basis is because the residents and the voters of the town are spending a significant amount of money investing in a wastewater improvement program, and I think we need to continually remind people here, this is not so much from a science point of view, but I think from a policymaker point of view, I think it's important that we periodically update the residents of the community in terms of what's going on with water quality in their own community. My hope is that water quality testing and monitoring and sampling can expand over time to more areas, and we can be briefed on other characteristics of the water quality, and we can expand into the areas like our ponds, which is an area where there's significant public interest as well. So, the idea of frequency is something that I'm going to continue to advocate for because I think it's important for the public to know. The other thing that I think we need to do is we need to find ways to take this very helpful information and sometimes, break it down into more readable, and this isn't necessarily your job, this is, on our end with our communications team and some of the other folks, but finding ways to break this information down so it's readily available, readily digestible, and easy to interpret for people. I mean, obviously, this kind of conversation and having this kind of Q&A is very helpful for us, but for the average resident, it would be nice to be able to hand them some information. We want to be talking about wastewater at every town meeting, and we'll probably be talking about it at every special town meeting. So to be able to provide information on the status of the water quality today, yesterday, and in recent time, I think is all incredibly helpful for us. You can make an argument that that kind of frequency may not be necessary from a variety of other perspectives, but I think given the amount of money that the residents and the voters of Yarmouth are spending in this topic, I think it's very much a worthwhile investment that we should continue to stay on top of and pursue.
If I might, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman. One of the things that we have been trying to promote is actually trying to get to more simple kinds of outreach information to make sure that people have a clearer understanding. We've helped various organizations. We've been working with the Vineyard Commission, some of the towns on the Cape, to sort of create more colorful, splashy, kind of public things that are easily accessible to the public, to give them a better sense of and better access to the key take-homes in a lot of this information. I would encourage you to do that, and maintaining that maybe side by side or integrated into what's going on with the CWMP. That's a good way to sort of make sure that it all stays current and understood, so that it's all linked together.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Next item, wastewater and airport PFAS update. I guess Jeff and Laurie have this one, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Jeff Colby, Public Works Director again, and Lori Rosella, our Water and Wastewater Superintendent, are here to talk to you about our wastewater projects. I think that was a great presentation that we just had to set the table for why we're doing some of these things. And so the first part of the presentation is about our wastewater project. So just a little bit of background and in reference purposes. I think it was important as part of this update to have a couple of maps that are very helpful. We try to have it at every time we talk about wastewater, we try to have these maps available so people understand kind of the roadmap where we're going. This particular one is our 8-phase plan, and I think it was very interesting to hear from Mr. Eichner about, that program and that water quality and going back to the regulators. So right now, this is what the model is telling us that we need to do in order to address our nitrogen challenges. But depending on, what we do and how quickly we do and how quickly the environment or the estuaries respond to that, we might be able to reduce or change this over time. So this is certainly our starting point. But certainly the flushing program that was talked about with regards to Parkers River Bridge, we'll be looking to do the Bass River Bridge, North Dennis Road Bridge as well. So there's a number of different programs out there in addition to our wastewater program that's looking to improve the water quality. So all this will help kind of inform our program. It's a very dynamic program, but we need to get started. And with that said, our first phase is right here. So we also like to have this map every time we talk about wastewater as well. Funding was approved, as the board is well aware, at our Springtown meeting for our first phase, our $207 million first phase of the program. And because of that being such a large program, we had to break that into 6 different contracts. Contract number 1, as shown on the screen, is in that green hatched area. That's our wastewater treatment facility. And the contracts 2 through 6, the next 5 contracts are all related to the collection system. As part of that first phase, we did bid out contracts 2 and 3 prior to town meeting. And as part of that, you can see that contracts 2 is in yellow on the screen and contract 3 is in green. One of the reasons for breaking those contracts out that way is because contracts 5 and contract 4 are ones that we're coordinating with Mass DOT as part of projects they're anticipating both of those areas. But contracts 2 and 3 are ones that we need to do separately and do those in advance of the other work going on. So with that said, here's what our recent update is. Contracts 2 and 3 were bid, as I mentioned before. We're still waiting for Mass DEP's approval to award those contracts. But we do have 2 willing contractors that have continued to work with the town and extend those bids for a period of time. 30 days at a time is what we've been doing the last couple of months until we get the authority to award from Mass DEP. The 90% design plans were also recently submitted to the town for the water resource recovery facility. And that is the treatment location at 99 Buck Island Road. Those plans continue to advance. In fact, today they're probably closer to 97 or 98% complete, with a completion in the next couple of weeks of those design plans. The state revolving fund application was filed just this past Friday. That was Friday the 13th of October. That was the full information that the state revolving fund needs in order to move our application forward for all 6 of the contracts. We have met with Mass DEP to discuss moving forward with those contracts 2 and 3 that were bid out, and we have 2 contractors that are ready to begin that work. And the path forward that Mass DEP has offered us for awarding those, the authorization to award, is the notice of intent to file a watershed permit. So we know that we need to file a watershed permit as part of this new Title V regulations that are out there to avoid residents having to put in innovative alternative septic systems. It's part of our plan to move forward with these watershed permits. So if we put the state on notice that we intend to do that, they will allow us to move forward with contracts 2 and 3. So a draft of that notice of intent is intended to be forwarded to DEP this week. So that's where we stand with regard to the award of that. Depending on how quickly they turn that around, we then will be able to officially award contracts 2 and 3 for the collection system. So we have ongoing discussions also with Mass DEP regarding the groundwater discharge permit. That is a permit that we'll need to have in place before we can award the contract for the water resource recovery facility, the treatment facility. So that's critical. That's a critical path item at this point. They've indicated that through recent discussions, they're willing to give us a certain amount of flow to be discharged at 99 Buck Island Road. But the Bad news at this point is it's not as much as we had planned for. And the watershed, and so that groundwater discharge permit is something that is still part of ongoing discussions. We are going to be able to get a good portion of the Phase 1 flow discharged at the treatment plant location, according to current discussions we're having, but we need to explore other options. And the good news is we do have other options out there. As part of our discussions with DEP, they've formally, made us aware through draft letters as well as discussions about various options they feel are viable in order to accommodate the other flow that we need for our program, as well as the more critical first phase that we need to get permitted. The watershed permit is also something we're continuing to pursue. As I mentioned before, we need to file a notice of intent that we're going to be filing those, but there is some expense associated with watershed permits for our 3 watersheds, Parkers River, Lewis Bay, and Bass River, and we will be pursuing funding at the spring town meeting for doing that permitting. In fact, we've already reviewed the request, at least with our first step in the process with the Capital Budget Committee, indicating that we need to do this work, and this is what it's going to cost for us to move that forward over the next 2 years and get those watershed permits for the 3 impaired water bodies. So with that said, probably the biggest question we get these days is, what's the schedule? When are we going to start to see, work happening with each of those contracts? So what you have in your packet was the owner's project manager's update. In part of that update, talk about the, recent accomplishments, which I covered with the previous slide, but they also talk about the contract schedule. So we have the 6 contracts that were on that previous map that I showed you, and the construction date as well as the estimated end of construction date is part of ongoing discussions, and this is what the current schedule looks like. As long as we can get through our groundwater discharge permit discussions with DEP and get that issued, we're looking at beginning construction on that treatment facility in June of 2024 of next year. For collection system 2 and 3, which we have the bids available in hand. At this point, now that we're squarely in the middle of October, by the time we're able to award those, the contractor completes their submittal process, gives us the schedule, that gets approved. We're really looking at something that's more likely the first of the year in order to begin construction in those areas for 2 and 3. Contracts 4 and 5, that's going to be next June or September, depending on which one of those contracts that we're looking at. All the contracts need to be awarded by June 30th of 2024, and that's our target date. We have it shifted for contracts 4, which is the Route 28 intersection and Bass River Bridge project, a little bit later to try to better line up with the work happening there at the Bass River Bridge. They're looking to begin that project, or at least award that project, in the fall of 2024. So our work on contract 4, we've been able to get an extension from SRF to begin as late as September, still qualifying for the state revolving fund 0% financing, as well as the debt forgiveness, and start that a little bit later to better line up with the Mass DOT project. So with that said, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. That's the essence of the update for our current wastewater plan. And before we move on to PFAS, I'd like to pause here and see if there's any questions about wastewater and where we currently are.
Okay, Peter?
No, it's great that we've got some tentative schedules, and hopefully soon it'll be less tentative and more firm. And again, I as an aside, I do want to mention, appreciate the tour that you guys gave us to all the water facilities the other day. It was a great learning experience for myself and the other selectmen that were there, I'm sure.
Great, thank you.
Dan?
Thank you. It seems like the dates have shifted a bit. What is the predominant reason for that? Is that the delay in getting the discharge permit into the treatment, or is it multiple different reasons for the delays?
Well, it depends on what contract you're talking about.
Yeah.
Currently, the biggest delay, we're on schedule for many of the milestones with regards to the treatment facility so far, at least through the design process. But the most significant delay, and I think the one that people are seeing the most, because we're not actually working out there on Route 28 currently, is in contracts 2 and 3. And the delay for that is not having the authorization to award from the state. That is related to the groundwater discharge permit. That is our outstanding permit with them. But based upon, as I mentioned before, current discussions with DEP, they've given us a roadmap forward with filing of this notice of intent that will allow them to give us the authority to award and move that forward. So that is the bulk of the delay currently. And that's the reason why we're not working this fall on contracts 2 and 3, which would primarily be Route 28. We've had discussions with the 2 contractors that have the tentative award on those 2 contracts, and that's the first area of interest. They were actually hoping to get most of the Route 28 work done in this off-season. They'll be able to get some done going forward on the time schedule we've got identified here. It's just uncertain whether they'll be able to get it all done before next summer, but we'll know better after we award it and get their schedules.
And I assume with delay comes increased costs? Are these contracts that are being entered into, are they contingent on start dates? I imagine that people are taking inflation costs into play, right? So those costs will go up.
Yes, there is the potential for those contracts to increase based upon increased time in which to get them done. It's certainly going to be more financially beneficial to continue to work with the current contractor we have than to completely rebid.
Yep, no, I
As
get
soon as
that.
you rebid, that's even a longer time frame. And what we've seen on other projects is that would increase the cost much more significantly than a small change based upon a few months that if, a contractor has to wait to begin.
Yeah. Can I ask what the disconnect was in terms of expecting that we could discharge that amount of water at the treatment site and then finding out that we couldn't? How did that happen?
There are some concerns that DEP has about what can be discharged there. And I know in your packet there was a couple of exchanges with DEP that the town and our project management team had, and they outlined some of them. But they're holding very strictly to some conservative design guidelines with regards to how much mounding and what that would look like as it relates to impacts with other surface water bodies. And because of that, concerned about the mound that exists below where the discharge would happen for the water, that limits how much you can discharge in that area. So that's part of an ongoing discussion. We don't know exactly the number they're going to allow us, but it's clear from current discussions that it's much less than we'd initially anticipated.
Was that a change on their part, or did we just miss something as far as a criteria that we didn't take into consideration?
That is, I wouldn't say that's a difficult question. I wouldn't say it's changing on the part of DEP. I think they've been clear as to what their policies and requirements are for discharge. I think there was some hope from our permitting team that they would be a little more flexible with us than they have been. And I think one of the elements of concern on DEP's part is that Yarmouth is kind of the first one at the table with these more recent stringent requirements, if you will. And there's other communities like Dennis and even some towns that currently have a discharge permit but want to increase that, such as Barnstable or Chatham or Falmouth, that are running into these same issues with these very conservative environmental approaches that DEP has. But we're here with a new permit, and there's concern on DEP's part that they don't want to be too flexible, or that would set a precedent, and they need to apply it to everyone.
All right, that makes sense. All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Mark?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the update, Jeff. Your skills at diplomacy are to be applauded. I can't help but be angry about all this. Not at you, but at the state. the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has been urging us to gain significant momentum and make significant progress in dealing with wastewater. And yet what they're doing is they're dragging their feet and causing all sorts of problems in our ability to get this project going. I mean, we got the permits done last year. We got the project out to bid last year. And here we are today still wondering when the hell they're going to give us the green light to go forward. This is outrageous. This is outrageous. I think as a board, we have to demand that DEP and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts get off their ass and work with us to get these projects going. It's an outrage. I, for one member, find what they're doing to be totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. There should be no significant delays for contracts, these contracts for the collection system. They're jerking us around when it comes to the watershed permit. I mean, where's the sense of urgency? We were getting a huge sense of urgency when they were working on these rules and regulations, but here we are getting literally jerked around by Mass DEP. You don't have to respond. This is my observation just in terms of what's going on. It's totally unacceptable. I think as a board, we should be demanding the DEP get off their ass, and we should be getting our legislators heavily involved in putting some real pressure on these folks to get this stuff going. What are we waiting for? We all know, we've all signed off on the program, we've all signed off on the roadmap, but the state just keeps dicking us around on this stuff. This is just an outrage. And then to hear this minutia and debate about the discharge permit, I mean, give me a break. I mean, the reality is we should be able to make significant progress on all of these fronts, but they're holding us back. Now, my question for you is, who is it at DEP that seems to be holding this up? Is it in Boston or is it here in southeastern Massachusetts? Who are we dealing with the most that seems to be holding us up?
Our permit is going to be issued by the Southeast region, but we have been dealing with both Boston as well as Southeast region officials at the highest levels. They're all very aware of our project. Our project is the biggest one out there by far, a $200 million project. Nobody has that. If you look at the state revolving fund intended use list, 50 or $60 million are rare. A $200 million project is extremely rare. So, they've indicated that they have prioritized our project. We haven't seen that translated to action quite yet, but we are working with both officials in Boston as well as Southeast region.
I mean, we received the bids in April, all right? Generally, you don't sit on that here it is, heading into November, and we still haven't awarded the bids on the project. That's just crazy. That's outrageous. I think as a board, we have to weigh in pretty heavily and very strongly and let people know at DEP just how disappointed we are. We need some help from our legislative delegation to get them off their butt. That's what I think, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate the update. I think this information is very, very helpful for us. Obviously, we need to keep these updates going, but I think at this point, I've heard enough to know that unless we put pressure, all right, we're going to fall further behind, all right? And it'll create even more complications for us. We got to hold the Commonwealth accountable. They're the ones that want us to do this, but yet they're dragging their feet and giving us the green light to get some pretty simple stuff done. So I don't find fault with our team. I think we have an excellent team. They're doing a great job. They're working very hard. Yes, there's some things that we need to work on with respect to how we characterize and deal with the discharge permit. But all in all, there's some great work going on, and I think the state is unnecessarily holding us back. And unless we do something, unless we get some changes, we're going to fall further behind on our schedule. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I want to try to drill down a little bit on the facts here. When we filed for our permit, did we have the same discharge capacity as DEP is now complaining about?
When we filed our...
Or was that a component, the discharge capacity? I assume we're talking about the discharge at Buck Island Road.
Correct. We've always known that we've needed, according to our comprehensive wastewater management plan, we've needed multiple sites for
Okay,
discharge.
yeah. But isn't the beef right now the Buck Island site?
Yes, because all of our modeling has indicated that it can take our first phase flows and potentially even second and third phase flows at that site. DEP has not been convinced of that yet.
Okay, so when we first filed for the comprehensive permit, didn't we have to put down what we felt the capacity was of the discharge on that site,
Yes,
the Buck Island site? Did they complain at all at that point?
not at that point.
Did they
approved our
indicate
plan.
at that point there was any problem with those calculations?
No.
Okay, when did they first raise the issue? When did they first say, no, that's excessive based on what we would like to see?
So last month, or not last month, last year, last summer, approximately 14 months ago, we submitted a hydrogeologic, or our consultant design team did, report to them. And at that time, after they're reviewing it, they indicated they had concerns with the volumes that we were proposing at that site.
And that was last summer?
It was submitted last summer, yes.
When you say last summer, you're talking about this one that just passed or the one before that? Are you talking about the summer of 2022?
August of 2022 it was filed.
Okay. So are these capacities substantially different?
Yes.
Different enough that you have to kind of go back to the drawing board to figure out how you're going to address that?
Yes.
And would it necessarily entail considering second and third alternatives to be incorporated into that first
Absolutely.
discharge phase?
Yes.
So it's going to have a ripple effect throughout the whole 8 phases, correct?
Absolutely.
And so when the comprehensive wastewater plan was first filed, it had these discharge sites and capacities for all 8 phases?
Yes, 2 sites were identified, this Buck Island Road site, 99 Buck Island Road, as well as Bass River Golf Course.
Okay, and if we're going to have to use some of those to satisfy DEP, at least based on present circumstances, and we're going to have to use other sites to mitigate the discharge at Buck Island Road, then we're going to have to look for additional discharge sites, am I correct?
That's correct.
So this has an effect of carrying right through the entire 8 phases of the project,
Yes, absolutely.
based on where they are right now. Okay.
Right.
All right. Do they indicate why their requirements are so far, are that much more conservative than our projections? Do they indicate what environmental harm that they're concerned with?
They have identified the criteria that they're concerned with, and there's been a couple, but the primary one is the impact to surface water bodies, other water bodies that are within the area where the discharge would occur.
Okay. How do we, what's our approach to dealing with this issue with them? I mean, Mark's talking about raising some havoc, but I mean, other than that, from a technical point of view, what can we do? Just try to mitigate the discharge there and put some of that discharge on other sites?
In short, yes. So the plan currently is to maximize, what they'll allow us to discharge at 99 Buck Island Road. As I mentioned before, indications are it won't be the full flow or need for phase 1. And then we'll have to look at other sites which have been identified. Even our comprehensive wastewater management plan identified other sites. They were less flow, less ideal for a number of different reasons, more isolated, potentially even within zone twos to wells, things like that. But those are the areas that DEP has encouraged us to look at to supplement the flow that 99 Buck Island can handle.
Now, with the awarding of the contracts, I think you said, we're talking about number 2 and 3?
Those are the most pressing, right?
They'll do that with the filing of a notice of intent. They'll allow you to go ahead and award those contracts.
Yes, that's what they've indicated.
But with respect to any other contracts, the other 4 contracts on Phase 1, that won't be allowed until you work this issue out with them?
That's correct. It's all connected to the groundwater discharge permit, right?
And so what is the timeline for us to resolve all of this in terms of, from DEP's point of view?
Well, as part of the notice of intent filing, we need to file for timelines and milestones. And so we're suggesting those milestones to be as aggressive as possible so we can get moving with the project. But in those milestones, we are targeting the end of December in order to have the groundwater discharge permit, in order to move us forward so that we don't delay. We don't miss the June 30th of 2024 award dates, miss the milestones associated with the SRF, State Revolving Fund Program. So there's some critical timeframes that we're really up against here. We were suggesting what those dates are that we need to have determinations by DEP. So those are part of those ongoing discussions and part of the filing of the notice of intent.
So the June 24 date, if everything could be resolved by then, we would not expect any escalation in price for any of the contracts? Or might we still see price escalation?
We might still see some cost impacts, particularly for the contracts that we haven't been able to award 2 and 3 that are out there, because the contractors on those anticipated being able to start now, and that's delayed. But I'd suggest even the contracts that we haven't bid out that we're waiting on for this spring, if the longer you wait, the more expensive things are, we need to get those on the street as soon as possible. We'll be ready to get those out very shortly. We still don't have the approval from DEP with the groundwater discharge permit to move forward. So those delays have the potential to impact costs as well.
Do we anticipate any potential problems with them hanging us up on our notices of intent, or do we expect those will be pretty routinely approved?
I would hope that those would be pretty regularly approved. I mean, we haven't seen that translate into action yet, as I mentioned before. We'll file those shortly. They're very simple forms. I think the milestones and the dates are the biggest part of that. So there's not a lot of review that needs to happen as part of that. So certainly the hope is they'd be able to turn around quickly.
Is there any possibility that any of those other contracts going forward could be awarded with similar notices of intent filed, or do you think that they're allowing phases 1 and 2 with the filing, that's it, and they're gonna insist upon compliance with the discharge issue being resolved for us to be able to go forward with the other 4 contracts?
Well, it's difficult to project what they might allow us to do, but certainly we would hope that, if it comes down to continued delays in the groundwater discharge permit, they'd allow us some flexibility to award, because we need to move these forward.
Yeah. Like Mark said, I got real problems with them. With them hanging up the project during permitting. There's got to be ways that we can simultaneously be moving forward with the awarding of these contracts and working towards a solution for the underlying issues.
I agree.
That's what reason dictates should happen.
Yes.
But thank you very much. Yes.
Going back to the discharge permits, if we have to use additional sites, is this going to require additional piping to Bass River from Buck Island and stuff?
Yeah, so all the plan is for
I'm
all,
looking at additional dollar signs.
there is the potential for that, yes. All the treatment is still planned for the Buck Island Road site, but every other location will require additional piping and pumps.
Which would be more money.
Right. I agree with the rest of the board, except for, I haven't heard from Dan yet, but we need to jump on the state and our legislators to get this thing moving. This is ridiculous. You know, if we can't do X, Y, Z, we should be able to get at least contracts going and then work out the X, Y, Z, which is the unknown factor as to where this extra water needs to go.
Dan?
Well, I don't have any problem with it. It's a shell game. I don't understand this at all. Incredibly increased costs. You said Bass River. What was the other site that you were identifying immediately?
So 99 Buck Island Road, the treatment location, and Bass River Golf Course. Those are the two primary sites we identified and knew we'd need to use at some point.
And they would be able to handle the capacity for phase one?
For all 8 phases, based upon initial modeling.
We're just really escalating the discharge portion of the plan.
Right, we always knew we needed to look at other locations. What we're needing to do is do that sooner
Right.
than we'd anticipated.
Right. Which
And our
takes,
funding's contingent upon that.
and it takes
Correct.
dollars away from what has already been approved for the first. So are you contemplating possibly having to change the scope of the first phase?
Depending what the discharge options are, that might change the scope, yeah.
They are not helping us, are they? In about 20 different fronts.
No, they're screwing us. I mean, that's the reality of it. They're holding us up. It's costing more money. They're dragging this thing out. It's outrageous. I do think that we will have to advance the studies looking at other discharge sites. I agree with the chairman that there are things that we're just going to have to do, but we should be pressing for relief so we can award contracts and sustain momentum on the rest of the program. You add this with the difficulties on Route 28, and you know Yarmouth's biggest problem in doing wastewater is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's the reality of it, and I just don't think. I think if we just don't do anything and don't speak up, I think shame on us. We owe it to the voters of Yarmouth and the people of Yarmouth to fight for getting this project going under the fastest possible terms and at the most reasonable cost. And the way the state is handling this is they're driving up the costs, they're creating delays, and I don't think we should tolerate any of it. And I might sound like I'm hitting the nuclear button here, but I think, I've pretty much had it up to here. I think really we have to weigh in very, very strongly and demand that our legislators step to our side and really get this thing moving.
I'm going to go to our town administrator, which is not, a normal thing. What are your thoughts on this, Bob?
Well, first and foremost, I think that the pathway that has been offered the town to move forward with contracts 2 and 3 is critically important. That was manufactured by the DEP. It does not exist normally in their regulations. And it's as a result of us, we really went ballistic when we found out that we were being delayed. I think we were under the impression that we should be allowed to move forward with those portions of the contract. They don't relate to the discharge permit, and that would have given us plenty of time to work out the discharge permit. And I think we were all shocked to see that the entire financing package was related to that permitting component. So it was at that point where the officials in Boston, right at the top levels of DEP, they at least jumped in and came up with, we knew we needed to file for a watershed permit notice of intent at any rate, because that will stop the clock ticking, right? There's that 2-year period after which folks will be on notice to install those systems. So it's not a real hardship doing the notice of intent. And if we get that paperwork in DEP's, defense, they feel that at least that keeps us alive for now. Now that's step one. It's right now the most critical step to get those 2 contracts moving and approved under SRF. So we have that. Now, the second issue, it's kind of a thorny issue. And, it does come from with the DEP, that it's almost like several hands not talking to each other. The way, I look at it is they have this regulation, and then they put on top of it this regulation, and then this regulation, and when you get to the top, you look down, and if it's opaque, you can't see through it, that means there's no pathway. And I think in this situation, it is a very difficult problem that these groundwater concerns have emerged, and they don't want to permit us to the levels. But the problem is that they're basing it on what they consider technical terms. They feel it's an environmental protection step that they're taking, so it really makes it difficult to run in there and say you have to stop what you're doing on your technical review of this proposal. I think what we're trying to do is they provided a correspondence to us that provided a roadmap of what they wanted to see from a technical standpoint to approve that permit. So I think right now, we're stuck providing them what they've asked for, and we can continue to keep the pressure on them and see if this holds up the plant next and we can't bid that out, that's gonna be a serious problem for phase one. But we do have the wherewithal to start at least on that distribution system, but the issue is this, is that there's some risk associated with that, but in the scheme of the whole program, it's not a huge risk. I think to shift it to the.
Bigger risk is losing the $207 million.
Yeah, or else trying to move ahead and get the plant approved to build without the discharge capacity. See, that's no good. This whole program, what we've learned is that we're thinking how much wastewater can we treat? That's how much environmental good we can do.
Then what do you do with it?
It's not how much wastewater you can treat. That's the easy part. It's how much effluent you can discharge. That determines how you can move forward. And the bottom line is we can't build that plant unless we know we can operate it at the level that we propose. Otherwise, we won't be able to connect the customers to it, and we won't be able to pay for it. So the discharge and the plant are tied at the hip, hand in hand. And it's difficult to ask the state senator to, make them give us a discharge permit.
I'm not asking that.
No, I know, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying is that this is what we're confronting, is that how do we get enough pressure on DEP? Right now, at least they're saying that Yarmouth is their number one priority. That right from Boston, they told us that you have our attention. But they've asked us for more information, so I think, right now, we're at the point that we have to get them their data and try to cobble together enough discharge to get us through phase one and to provide us with, I think, then we're gonna need additional time to either file for these exotic federal permits or any other steps that we wanna take to up that. But it's phase one right now that we're hyper-focused on.
These federal permits supersede what DEP's requirements would be?
It's another level. It works like this, is what they're saying is that if you put too much effluent in the ground at Buck Island, that they feel that it may impact the surface water. And so if you impact surface water, now you're in a situation that the permit has to come from EPA.
Okay.
And it's a very onerous permit. It may take, more than a year, So it's nothing we can jump into now and say, well, that's our quick fix. But it may be, if we're in a 40-year phase, it may be that once we get through phase one, that we need to start working on, some other options than simply spread it all over town. We may need to go into the EPA and at least set the stage for a future permit that may involve surface water, but that's years off.
So the notice of the filing of intent's going to allow us to award these two contracts, but then what? Do we have and I know this is kind of like a recent obstacle, right? So do we have, are we meeting to get a game plan with Jeff, Laurie, David, yourself,
Yeah, we met today.
to see where we're going to go, what the approach is going to be going forward?
Yeah, we had the most recent meeting this morning. Mr. Young was there. He's got a whole laundry list of things. We've had several meetings over the last couple of weeks just on this topic alone. And, the one thing we do have a specific correspondence from the DEP that in conjunction, they give us the 1-2 punch. They said, okay, number one, we're gonna let you file this notice of intent. At least that'll get this thing off your back on contracts 2 and 3. And then number 2, this is what we want you to look at for the groundwater discharge overall. So we've got what their marching orders, what they told us they want us to do, and we're gonna fulfill that. We're gonna provide them with that information. We're gonna issue contracts 2 and 3, and then that leaves us a fairly short window to try to resolve the rest of it to get the plant. And that's the big nut right now, is to get that plant approved with discharge. And they've asked for more information, we're gonna try to give it to them. And if at that point, if the DEP is a total roadblock on it, we'll know before long. And, but DEP does control the project right now. They control the financing, they control everything, and there's a lot of different arms up there. And from the people that do the groundwater work, they have not shown a great degree of flexibility with us, that's for sure.
Would they be at least willing to guarantee the SRF funding at 0%?
No, they reminded us, and in the material that you have, you can see the emails. They reminded us that you're not allowed to move forward until we approve your project.
That's, the funding's a carrot, right?
We need a letter from regional to SRF saying that we approve this.
We're just getting jerked around. That's the reality of it.
Do you
It's
okay
costing
for
us
us
money.
to know this?
This is totally unacceptable.
Anybody else? I want to thank Bob. I have had no prior conversation with him. I just, something told me that I needed to hear from him, and he's usually on top of these things. So I'm glad that you've already started meeting with the main actors here to try to address these concerns. So thank you very much for that. All right, we're ready to proceed, Jeff, with PFAS.
Okay.
Something a little less controversial.
Well, this might be too, but it's a complicated issue for sure. There is PFAS, as everyone I think is well aware, coming from the airport. We've been staying in tune with what's going on there with the different reporting requirements and the information that's been put out there. And so Lori has put together some great slides here to kind of walk you through what we do know about this issue. It's an important issue for us because it's not only, PFAS that's, maybe heading in our direction, but we're very sensitive to the drinking water wells. We're dealing with PFAS as I think, many of you saw, we're treating over at wells 4 and 5, which is well away from any area that we're talking about here at the airport, but it is affecting some of our wells in other locations, so we're just sensitive to that and want to, be aware if there's any need for dealing with treatment at other wells and other locations. And with that said, Lori has some very good information for you here on the airport PFAS.
Okay, so I'm actually going to pull up the map to go through these bullet items. Slow to turn. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, so as we all know, PFAS is a relatively new problem. So the first time that the airport was asked to look at PFAS on their site was in 2016. And after numerous samples, they found that they had PFAS emanating from 2 locations at the airport. And this is because of the foam that they use to put out fires. It's a foam that is required, I believe, by the FAA to put out airplane fires. So the 2 spots that they found high concentrations of PFAS are outlined in yellow on this map. One area on the north end is where they did their training, and on the south end is where the chemical was stored. So those 2 areas were capped in 2020. It was like August to September timeframe of 2020, and the caps are shown here in the red hash areas. And the southern cap is an asphalt cap, and the northern one is like a geotextile membrane type of thing that has sand and grass on top of it. In addition, the treatment for the Mar wells, which is actually right here. So this is, I think everyone's seen this map many times. So the Mar wells, which are Hyannis's, are 3 Hyannis wells, Hyannis Water Department wells down at the bottom of this, in the middle, those ME1, 2, and 3. They started treatment for PFAS at those 3 wells in 2020 as well.
Lori, do you have like a highlighter or
yeah.
some way to at least show us exactly where the Mar wells are?
Those are the drinking water wells right there.
That would be great. And see, the town of Yarmouth line is right next to it,
Yes.
right? So there's the Mar wells.
Because that's where everyone, so there's,
Yeah.
so, the plumes from the 2 areas, this is one smaller plume, and then that's the bigger plume that recently, this is all according to Horsley Witten's report, were just found in Mar well number 2. That plume touched Mar well number 2 in July of 2022 for the first time. And at this point, based on their modeling with the caps and with the Mar wells pulling out some of the contamination and treating it, this is the kind of the end of their work on this. So they have provided this report, which is the draft final phase 4 report and the immediate response action plan completion report. That's what they are just in last week, they just published this report. And so at this point, they'll be moving on to the phase 5 monitoring, starting in April of, let me go back, sorry. In April of 2024, they'll start this phase 5 monitoring. So the phase 5 monitoring is, they'll inspect the caps every 6 months. Hyannis Water Department will continue to treat the groundwater for PFAS and do all the monitoring required by Mass DEP drinking water standards. Then they will continue to collect groundwater samples at 9 monitoring wells in May and in November of every year, and will provide a report to Mass DEP every 6 months. And I think the key thing here is you can see from these plumes, they definitely affect, or they seem to affect Hyannis wells, but our town of Yarmouth wells are way over here, off the map.
Yeah.
So our wells are not impacted by this plume.
Can you show the Mill Pond conservation area that's in the town of Yarmouth? That area, I believe, abuts the site where there, I believe, is suspected.
Yeah, that's going to be south of this map here, but it might be just.
No,
just
no,
south.
I think it's right. The town of Yarmouth has conservation land that immediately abuts that town boundary, right next to the Mar wells. All that green space that you see there, a lot of that going east, encompassing almost up to Mill Pond. A significant portion of that land is conservation land, subject to the control and management of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. And I think one of the concerns that's been expressed in town, at least by the residents there, is that PFAS is emanating into Yarmouth and may be contaminating that conservation land. Do we know, to your knowledge, whether or not that indeed is the case?
Well, they're showing that this is their plume, does go into Yarmouth.
So there is a PFAS plume going into Yarmouth.
Yeah, this
and
modeling.
impacting conservation land in the town of Yarmouth.
This indicates it's an estimated plume where the groundwater is above this, or below the standard, or above the standard, sorry, for drinking water. GW1 is the standard, so that's what that plume is showing. So outside of it would be lower PFAS levels.
All right, what's the directionality of the plume? Where's it going?
South.
South, so down.
It's coming from all these dots up here and going south. But their modeling indicates that this is the edge, this is the farthest it will go.
I would venture to argue, I'm not a hydrologist, but I would venture it's going in that direction because those wells pump at a fairly significant rate, at a combined rate of roughly 3 million gallons a day, which is a significant amount of water, which some suspect is one of the reasons why water has drained from the Mill Pond marshes, Yarmouth Conservation Land. It's not, the Hyannis Water Department has been known to pump water at excessive rates in depleting ponds. The Mary Dunn ponds were basically devoid of water after a period of time. So it doesn't surprise me that the excessive pumping, let's put it this way, could have an impact, and I would suspect that it does, on Yarmouth Conservation Land. And at one time, I remember as a kid, you could go into the Treasure Island gift store and hop on a boat ride and actually go through on a boat in that marsh area. And now you could probably walk, it's so dry, you could probably walk that area. Although I probably wouldn't walk it without some pretty big waders. It's very mucky in there. But the point is that at one time, there was a significant amount of water that would flow through that area where the Treasure Island owner could actually have boat rides through that entire conservation area. At the time, it wasn't conservation area. So water has definitely been taken from that entire system, that ecosystem there. So that's as far as we know where the delineation of the PFAS is. It is coming into Yarmouth. Yarmouth has impacted in some way. We probably don't know what the extent of the impacts are, when any. It would appear that there aren't any public health issues in Yarmouth, but there may be some environmental impacts. There may be, since we don't know what kind of habitat's there, although we do know that there have been reports of endangered species in that area. We just don't know what the impacts are or potential impacts are. Are they looking at doing monitoring wells in that area, further east into the?
No, their plan just continues with 9 monitoring wells that they already have.
Really? So they're not going to really, I mean, to me, in looking at it, it would appear that we're not going to really know the full extent of the plume. We're just going to know, we'll know about the plume goes to the Mar wells, but we won't know how much of that plume goes into the town of Yarmouth. Is that a fair statement, that they're sampling program?
Well, they're certainly showing a model, but it doesn't mean it's the actual data. It's what their model shows. So it could use some, verification, that certainly wouldn't hurt. What I would suggest is that, there's an ongoing permit with DEP in dealing with the monitoring and this program with regards to the cap associated with PFAS, that if people have a concern, if the board has a concern, certainly reaching out to DEP with those concerns and voicing what they might be and what additional steps we think would be appropriate. DEP is the one that is that holds all the strings in this particular case.
Right. But the point I'm trying to get at is that there's groundwater contamination coming into the town of Yarmouth, and it's impacting Yarmouth Conservation Land. And we don't know to what extent. And what I think I'm hearing tonight is that none of the responsible parties appear to be the slightest bit interested in determining the extent of pollution on Yarmouth property. Am I being unreasonable? And is that a conclusion that?
Yeah, as far as I know,
can
there
easily
are
reach?
no monitoring wells in Yarmouth.
Thank you. So they're not interested in looking at the extent to which they're contaminating Yarmouth property. Just wanted to get that on the record.
So this report, it's the immediate response action completion statement. It's a lot of words in the name of this title. But to be able to complete the IRA, it's stating that they've controlled or eliminated any imminent hazard to health, safety, public welfare, or the environment. So that's what at this point, the airport.
Who's saying that? The airport?
Yes, because they're submitting this completion report, that's how you, you can't
I would
complete
disagree
this
with that
IRA
assessment.
until you've eliminated or controlled the hazard.
That's debatable.
So as far as that goes, so this is the report. It's available online. I do have a copy of it in my office if anyone ever wants to review it. I believe it's also at the town libraries. If anyone wants to look at it, it is online at the link shown on the screen. There's a public meeting on December 1st, 2023. They haven't notified us of the date, the time and place at this time. And DEP will, or the airport, I think, will accept comments on the report through December 28th, 2023. So if anyone has any additional comments or questions they want to get in, it's really DEP that is overseeing the whole process, and you can get your comments in then.
I'm glad to see, Mr. Chairman, that we have many members of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission and staff here, and I'm sure they're very interested in this topic as well.
Dan?
Might I ask, has Yarmouth ever requested DEP to put monitoring wells in Yarmouth?
Well, I don't know if DEP would do the monitoring wells, but I think they could require that as part of this mitigation through the airport.
But has any overture been made to any of these authorities to screen for potential impacts to Yarmouth's water supply?
No, I could chime in there. You know, I attended, the meeting was in September at the Hyannis Town Hall prior to them publishing this report. And I specifically gave testimony at that meeting that on behalf of the town of Yarmouth, we requested that they install additional monitoring wells in Yarmouth. And they refused to do so. They claim that their monitoring has fully characterized the extent of the plume, and no additional monitoring wells would assist in that. And I don't think that's true, but I'm not a scientist. But I think we should file written comments to them and ask for some more monitoring wells. And I do, remind the board that you approved last month the access permit for the DEP to access town property to conduct surface water samples. So at least if there's a breakout into the Mill Creek proper, that estuarine environment, that at least they're doing the samples of the surface water. But a lot of these plumes, they can go down pretty deep. So, it might not be breaking up, but at some point, if it was going down towards Mill Creek, it would emerge, you would think, in the surface water.
I just don't know how they can throw up their hands and say that the problem is solved when the modeling seems to show that there's an impact to the neighboring town and they're ignoring it. That just doesn't
I think their justification is that although the plume may come into Yarmouth or be in the ground there, it's not an imminent risk to health or safety to anyone. That's what they're saying.
How do they determine that? That's really quite a statement.
Well, there's no drinking water wells there. That's part of it. And the wells that are there are being treated. And then I'm not sure there's any actual standards for swimming or coming in contact with sediment that has.
We don't currently have any concerns that any of our wells are going to be impacted by that directionality of the plume?
None of our drinking water wells will be impacted, no.
Yeah, they're so far away.
I think Mark's point's well taken. The person who potentially could be liable or responsible to the town of Yarmouth, we shouldn't totally rely on their research and the conclusions that they come to, because they may be self-serving, among other things. So I think we should ask for monitoring wells to be installed at a minimum.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I also think that it would be helpful, hopefully the Conservation Commission can have a time to look through this material as well, and I think to the extent that they have comments, I want to make sure that we advocate on behalf of our own Conservation Commission. The land that's impacted is under their jurisdiction, it's under their control as managers, and I think some of them may have some strong feelings about this as well. So my hope is that, we can not only advocate, and this is a very obvious request, is that we want them to identify the extent of contamination in Yarmouth and extend monitoring wells into Yarmouth to find out exactly where the toe of the plume is, how much of Yarmouth property has been impacted. I agree with you, Lori, that from a water supply point of view, we seem to be in a reasonably good shape there. I mean, our wells are not impacted. But I am concerned about the excessive pumping of those Mar wells and the impact that it's having to that larger ecosystem. And I'm really concerned that the plume itself is much further beyond than what they've characterized on that map. I mean, it seems very convenient that it goes right around the wells, but I would suspect that there's nothing indicating that the plume has sort of dissipated. It'd be one thing if on the toe of the plume, if it's as identified in the map, if the toe of that plume were to show sort of lower levels of PFAS, lower levels of contamination, some kind of indicator that the plume was ending or stopping, or they had wells where there's clean water on the other end of it, then you could say, okay, I think we've got a pretty good idea of where that plume is going. But the reality is we don't know. We're just guessing. They're guessing. I think it's reasonable for us to know how far that contamination is impacting Yarmouth. And then, depending on the results of that, we should be able to have them do an appropriate public health risk assessment of sorts or some kind of impact. Again, that's an area that has been identified as a habitat from the Natural Heritage Program, and so it does have a presence of endangered species. It would be helpful to know what kind of impacts there might be there as well. So I think, yeah, we want wells, but we also want them to fully assess the impacts should they find something, find contamination.
Mr. Chairman, did Horsley Witten do test wells east and south of the plume, or they're just guessing that's where the end of the plume is?
There's no test wells in Yarmouth. So that yellow line, dash line is Yarmouth. So no, it's all modeling from the data that they have.
Okay, so
from their-
they're modeling the toe, if you will.
Yes.
There's some test wells that are south, but they're all in Barnstable.
I don't know. I think we need to know where that toe goes, or where it is, or where it ends. And if cleanup is required, I believe it should fall on the town of Barnstable, not the town of Yarmouth. You agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I would also add, Mr. Chairman, I think it's great that Lori and Jeff are updating us, but my sense is that we're going to find that there really isn't a water supply or water from a supply point of view an issue. This is going to be more of a natural resources impact issue, I think, and a public health risk issue. So, I mean, it's great that Laurie and Jeff are doing this, but it may very well be, as we learn more, it may need to transition to another department to be more engaged in this. Because I think what we're talking about is impacts to conservation land, conservation property, and impacts to any wildlife or habitat or any critters or plants that are in that area. I'm not sure we're looking at a water supply issue here. I think from a water supply point of view, we seem to be in reasonably good shape. Even if that plume extended further out, I mean, our wells are some distance from that site.
Right.
Yeah, they're off the map.
How far are they, our wells, from that site?
Well, they're off the map, but they're also kind of northeast as well. So it's not like it's east, and if the plume expanded, they'd be heading that way. It'd be heading in the opposite direction of the groundwater travel.
Further north.
Oh,
No,
further north
much
than that.
further north.
Much further
North.
north, yeah.
Way up there.
Yeah.
So the flow would be northeast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Groundwater moves
Moves.
perpendicular to those blue lines. Those are groundwater contours. So they would start at where that cluster of dots is. It can only go pretty much south from
South,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
This seems like a logical time to be addressing this, right? Because the airport's still going through its process of environmental review. It just seems like part of the cleanup here should be a part of their process or conditioning for advancing and their own plans for expansion. And they're trying to get around that.
Yeah, this is their completion report for
Right.
their response, so now's the
It's all
time to
done.
get your comments in.
Good job, Barnstable. Yep. Wow. Do we need a consultant to be able to direct the town in this area?
We haven't had a consultant look at this yet. We have used Kleinfelder for quite a bit of our water analysis work. They've, certainly advised us on, what properties to protect or consider for acquisition, things of that nature. They've done a lot of reporting for us. So we have consultants that are available. We haven't had them look at this issue yet.
I just know you guys have so much on your plate, but this is important. I just wonder if we shouldn't have better information, and we don't seem to be getting it from Barnstable.
But if I could respond, I think what I'm arguing is I think we have enough information to know
wells.
tonight. We know tonight to at least make a request.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is an issue that really should be burdensome to the DPW or the water department. I think the impacts that we're looking at are more conservation-related potentially, and they need to be examined. So I don't want to say I would put this on the lap of the Conservation Commission or the conservation agent, but to me, it would appear that those are the kind of impacts, and they'd be in a much better position to make sure that the proper analysis is done to make sure that the conservation assets that they're responsible for managing are adequately protected by this groundwater contamination. So I would encourage the administration to sort of think about putting another quarterback on this particular problem. Because, like I said, I think water supply impacts, public works impacts are really not an issue here. What's good is that we have people that are very knowledgeable about water resources and water impacts and PFAS and so forth. So obviously, I'm sure folks would want to collaborate with them to help better assess the hydrology and what's going on there. But, yeah, I wouldn't want to saddle our DPW with this
No,
issue here.
That's why I was
Yeah.
thinking of somebody
Maybe a
else.
consultant can
Yep.
be assigned to maybe work with Concom or work with Conservation Department. That's where I would go with it, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Okay, Jeff and Laurie, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this entire agenda item, though, what I'd like to suggest as a board is that the next, with respect to wastewater, the next trigger, from what I understand, is a notice of intent or some kind of letter to DEP. And that's expected within a week, did you say?
This week, we
This week.
intend to get them the draft of that notice of intent.
Great. What I'd like to suggest is that for our next meeting, we have a draft letter by the board to DEP expressing full support for the approval of that notice and expressing any other additional concerns that might be appropriate to express at this time regarding the delays from DEP with respect to our project. I think our board needs to be on record in support of this notice and are calling upon DEP to work expeditiously with the town of Yarmouth in advancing our wastewater program.
That's fine.
Okay, so I'd make that motion.
With CCs to our legislative delegation.
Definitely.
We don't need a motion. It's just, we agree on that.
Okay, that's
You
good.
got that, right?
You got that, Bob?
Okay,
So we'll have a draft letter for our next meeting?
fine, we're good.
Good.
We're not meeting till town meeting, right?
We can act on it there, November 7th. I just think we need,
Is that our next meeting, the town meeting?
Yeah.
The 7th?
2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll do it the meeting before.
there you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Jeff and Laurie.
Thank you.
Now, we have Conservation and Wetlands Bylaw update. We have a rather extensive article in our warrant that we're going to address tonight. Which is Article,
Number changed a little, so I think
17?
18, 17, something.
we're 18.
18. Is that article, is that number 18 include the one that's getting withdrawn?
Yes.
Okay, so that's Article 18 then. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Brittany Durienza, the Conservation Administrator. I have several board
Ellie
members.
Lawrence, Vice Chair of the Conservation, and we
And
have
we have
two.
David Bernstein and Pat Mulhern from the Conservation Commission with us tonight as well. So we just wanted to give you an overview of our proposed wetland bylaw update for town meeting on November 7th. Just a list of our board members, and especially pointing out that we do have a vacancy on the board, and we are still seeking to fill this vacancy. Jumping right into the update, the purpose of the bylaw update, it was last amended in 1987, and over the past 35 years, there's been updates in science, and ranging from improving the clarity of the language, we've found a great need for revisions of this bylaw. It moves some of the provisions from the regulations into the bylaw to strengthen them. It adds clarifying detail in line with some of the recommended bylaws provided by the Massachusetts Association for Conservation Commissions and the Cape Cod Commission. The Cape Cod Commission Coastal Resiliency article also had help from the Woods Hole Group, the Urban Harbors Institute at UMass Boston, and a law firm called Wickersham and Hart LLP. So a lot of strong minds go into developing these model bylaws for all of the local municipalities in Massachusetts to use. The largest change in this bylaw is proposing additional resource areas, including vernal pools, the riverfront area, and a new resource area known as the Coastal Resiliency Zone. We did have a public meeting at our regularly scheduled Conservation Commission meeting to discuss these updates on September 21st, and we fielded questions from mostly consultants who deal with us often. And those are published in our minutes. There were several questions, mostly based on that new Coastal Resiliency Zone that we went through with them. Just going into those 3 new resource areas, the first one would be adding vernal pools to our jurisdiction. These vernal pools are seasonal pools of water that hold water for between 2 and 4 months in any given year, that provide essential habitat for interesting species in Massachusetts. A lot of these species they rely on these pools to complete their life cycle and would not survive without them. There are several other distinctive plants and animals that use these pools that can complete their life cycle without the pool, but it still provides better habitat and forage for them. Currently, these are only protected when they're either within a wetland resource area or if they're certified by the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. Currently in Yarmouth, we only have 7 certified vernal pools. 6 of those were certified this year, and they're all on the town of Yarmouth town-owned land. So right now, no vernal pools under private property are currently protected, and we are seeking to protect all of those that are on privately owned land. So the proposed bylaw would add these vernal pools as a jurisdictional area and presume their essential habitat function, whether or not they're certified by the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. The second addition would be the riverfront area. This is mostly just to create consistency with the state regulations. This is already a regulatable resource area introduced in 1966 under the Rivers Protection Act. It protects perennial streams that must flow throughout the year, except in drought conditions, and there is a jurisdictional area of 200 feet, and there's no additional buffer zone. At the moment, we wouldn't be providing any additional regulations in this area, just creating consistency with the state regulations. So on to our newest resource area, the Coastal Resiliency Zone. Under the current state act and our local bylaw, flood protection is listed as an important interest of our resource areas, and we have our own a resource area in itself is land subject to coastal storm flowage. However, there's no performance standards that the commission can use to regulate anything in this area, therefore making the Conservation Commission unable to protect it as a valuable resource area. We also use the current FEMA maps to depict the 1% flood risk. And these are only, they rely on historic data and therefore don't consider future risk. DEP has been considering promulgating regulations for this land subject to coastal storm flowage for several years. It was one of their main goals in the 2018 State Hazard Mitigation and Climate Adaptation Plan to publish and promulgate regulations for this area by 2023. We've had several presentations from state representatives listing their regulations, what they're proposing, what they're thinking. Back since 2021, they've been promising to promulgate these and have not followed through. So local municipalities are acting locally. And most of our suggested regulations and areas defined in our bylaw are taken directly from those presentations. We haven't made anything new. We are using the DEP definitions and regulations in our proposed bylaw, just trying to advance it a little bit sooner. So why do we need performance area standards for the land subject to coastal storm flowage? We are already severely overdeveloped in our flood zones in the town of Yarmouth, and we're at risk for future development. All of these areas are subject to infrastructure damage from storms that are only increasing in intensity and frequency due to climate change and sea level rise. Development of these areas are reducing the function of the flood zone to perform its essential functions and buffer the effects of coastal storms. Lastly, the cost. Designing to consider future flood risk has been shown to save on cost. The National Institute of Building Sciences in 2019 came out with a study showing that new structures exceeding the building code in respect to flood risk design saved $4 for every $1 invested. And FEMA also did a public study nationwide in 2020 showing in up to 2016 buildings that were exceeding the building code standard avoided annual losses about $2,000 per home, totaling about $1 million over 600 homes. And the overarching goal for this new bylaw and this new coastal resource area is to avoid, minimize, and mitigate the risk of environmental damage, loss of natural resources, human suffering, and the loss of life and property resulting from these coastal storms, flooding, erosion, and sea level rise. So getting a little bit more into this new resource area, the coastal resiliency zone will contain our current land subject to coastal storm flowage, a new expanded coastal flood risk area, and the buffer zones of all other coastal resource areas that currently exist. So that current land subject to coastal storm flowage, or the flood zone, is defined in the DEP regulations as land subject to inundation caused by the 100-year storm, surge of record, or storm of record. And the additional coastal flood risk area that we will be proposing to add will be the land subject to 1% storm by the best available coastal flooding model. So these flooding models will not only take into account sea level rise, but they will model future risk as well. So that regular flood zone, the land subject to coastal storm flowage, can be broken down into some sub-areas that currently exist. These aren't new, just a little explanation of them. The V zone, the A zone, and the coastal A, they're defined by their wave heights and therefore basically storm energy. The velocity zone has wave heights of greater than 3 feet and the greatest storm energy, going down to the minimal wave action zone, which is less than 1.5 feet, and the lowest wave energy. Under our new bylaw, we would have separate regulations for each of these zones based on their coastal intensity of storms. So we'd be the most limiting in the velocity zone and the least limiting in the minimal wave action zone. We would be proposing to prohibit new construction in that velocity zone. And there would be different performance standards for redevelopment where structures already exist. The coastal flood risk area is this new area of jurisdiction that's outside the land subject to coastal storm flowage, but within the coastal flood risk area. The regulations will be the most minimal here because it's furthest away from the wave action. We would be mostly looking at avoiding dangerous channelization of floodwaters, avoiding adverse flooding effects to nearby properties, and the preservation of soils and natural vegetation. So here's a map of our new coastal flood risk area defined by the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model, target year 2050, overlaying the current existing FEMA 1% flood zone. So areas that are in just blue show the new jurisdictional area, and areas overlaying gray and blue show where the land subject to coastal storm flowage and the new coastal flood risk model coexist. Even though I'm showing these on the same map, this data is not equal. The FEMA modeling uses historical data and does not include wave action, wind energy, and sea level rise in the data, while the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model includes projected sea level rise, wave action, and storm modeling to project future risk. And this would be projecting the future risk at the year 2050. I have a larger map here to look at those parcels. I know it's difficult to see, but we have this map uploaded on the town website and is already integrated into our town GIS. So if you're wondering if your property or another may be affected, you can input it into the GIS database and see if it falls into this new layer. There's one more sub-area within the new coastal resiliency zone that we'd be concerned with. It's the special transition area. And these are going to be areas located directly landward of currently protected coastal resource areas, including coastal beaches, dunes, barrier beaches, but most importantly, salt marshes, where the area would be projected to be in the path of predicted wetland migration, especially for our salt marsh communities. This is very important since we're facing a loss of especially our low marsh communities. And in order to protect that, we would have different regulations for new development and redevelopment within these special transition areas. That's pretty much an overview, and we'll take questions and comments.
Thank you, Peter.
Not sure what my questions are yet. I need to hear the rest of the committee and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a ton here. It looks like you're going to be changing some of your building codes based upon wave action and stuff. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Just the wetlands bylaw, not the building code.
Armoring of beaches and armoring along Bass River, is that covered as well?
Those would qualify as projects within our jurisdiction currently, and they would still be.
I'm going to wait to hear the rest of the committee, Dave.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. Obviously, it's been a long time, so I appreciate the need for it. I'm just curious, first of all, have you had stakeholder conversations? Have you had public meetings where people who might be impacted by these changes have had an opportunity to come in and speak to any concerns they have?
We had a public meeting at our September 21st meeting. We advertised on the local station on the website, and we sent an email blast to all of the consultants who filed with the commission in the past 3 years, and we've had several come in and ask questions. There were not very many residents there, but a few were there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that, but what are the impacts of these changes to the landowners? It's going to restrict what they can do on their property, what they can build on it. What about what's already there?
Yeah, so there will be, the most strict standards are in the velocity zone. In Yarmouth, we currently only have 35 structures in the velocity zone, and those 35 structures would be able to redevelop. There would be different, they would need to be raising their structures if they're having significant proposed redevelopment, but they wouldn't be prohibited from redeveloping their already developed property. We would be restricting new construction on those areas because there are so few already undeveloped parcels in the velocity zone that would be eligible for construction at this point, but we would be prohibiting that.
Okay. I think that was my biggest concern is, impacts to the people who enjoy these locations. Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Have you estimated how many additional structures you'd have jurisdiction over, total?
Not structures, it would be approximately 1.6 additional square miles.
So you're adding 1.6 square miles.
Yes, so they
to
would
your
be
additional
located
jurisdiction.
in the coastal flood risk area. And the regulations in the coastal flood risk area would be the most minimal compared to the velocity zone, where we're trying to focus our energy here. But we would be significantly increasing our jurisdiction, but we wouldn't necessarily be increasing the number of notice of intents we see. Most of the issues would be able to be reviewed administratively to ensure none of those seriously dangerous things that we're looking out for, like channelization, increase of significant amount of impervious surfaces would be occurring. So yes, we are definitely increasing our jurisdiction, but not in a sense
Of overpowering it.
of, yeah.
You're increasing your jurisdiction but not overpowering it, is that what you said?
Well, that's what I said. We're increasing it for the coastal resiliency, basically, because that's the
Yeah.
being proactive, and it's mostly for the marshes to be able to migrate back farther, is
Yeah,
what this is
even
for.
though this coastal flood risk model is projecting flooding to the 100-year flood to occur in these areas that the FEMA flood zone doesn't project it to occur, we are hoping to prevent the loss of property, the loss of natural resources on those sites, not necessarily prevent them from being developed.
So if I have a home, let's say it's in an area that you define or is somehow defined as within a coastal resiliency zone, if I want to add a deck to that property, do I have to file something with the Conservation Commission?
Yes, if you are currently in the land subject to coastal storm flowage and the coastal resiliency zone, the rules would remain the same. If you're in a new jurisdictional area, you would have to file either, depending on the scope of the project, just administrative review or
RDA.
review by the commission in an RDA, unless you're building something like a large new home that we would project it having a significant impact, and we would want to have the ability to put conditions on that project to protect the surrounding properties and natural resources. So there would be a few cases where we would see a notice of intent in those areas.
Yeah, if you're going to add 1.6 square miles, you're definitely going to be seeing more activity.
Yeah.
So, but you made the assessment that you won't see much new additional activity. What's that based on?
Not new activity, but activity that would require the scrutiny the point of these regulations, the bylaw, is to add these additional protections to the areas of most concern, which are closest to the coastal area. Just because the inland areas that are projected to be flooding are included, they're not at the most risk. They're at the least risk. So we will be reviewing those projects, but the level of scrutiny is maintained for the high energy areas.
Okay. So let me go back to my deck example in the project in a coastal resiliency zone. So it's 12 by 12 or 12 by 14. I'm going to put it in there. What are you going to be looking at? I want to build it responsibly. I want to be in conformance with your guidelines. So what should I be doing in the design of my deck or my proposed deck?
So we're still working on our regulations. We'll be promulgating them after our making them concurrently with our bylaw. But right now, it would be the same as if you were in the flood zone right now. Based on the size, you'd file an RDA or an administrative review. And if there is a significant amount of impervious surfaces on your site, you might have to do some plantings. But other than that, as long as you're not impeding the
I see.
floodwaters, causing dangerous ponding or channelization of floodwaters, it shouldn't be a big issue.
Shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, see, I think this is going to be the challenge for this, is just, the unknowns.
Yeah.
A lot of this is going to be subject to future regulations, and
Yeah.
Yarmouth voters traditionally have been somewhat curmudgeon-y when it comes to sort of anticipate, passing things where actions will happen later and we'll get the full implications of it. I don't want to sound overly negative. I just want to let you know that
Yeah, and that's,
this may take some ongoing work. I will admit, I haven't fully studied the proposal. I would love to have one of those maps so I can take a further look at your expanded jurisdiction that we're looking at here. I also want to just take a moment, Mr. Chairman, to commend you all as a Conservation Commission. I think you do wonderful work for the town. I applaud you for your service and your commitment. So I don't want you in any way to think that any of the questions or comments are a reflection on you and your work. You do a great job. I know you're out there looking for another member, so if anybody's watching and you want to serve on the Conservation Commission, now's the time to fill out your talent bank application, get it in so you can serve potentially on the Conservation Commission. So, yeah, I'd love to take a look at that map. And I think some of us are going to need more time to digest this and understand this, and we may need another pass, or we may, through the administrator, have more questions to submit to you. But I appreciate the work. My final question is, what other towns, and this could be very helpful, what other towns have adopted a regulation, have done essentially what you're suggesting that we do here? Because I'm assuming that there are other towns that have basically taken this step forward and expanded their jurisdiction and their regulations. Are there other towns on the Cape that have done that? And if so, which ones?
yeah, so I'm just going to take a step back. This has been in the process since 2021, and it was intended to come to town meeting then, but this map did not become available until this September. August, September. So that's what we've been waiting for. So no, there are no other towns with this exact coastal resiliency zone because this map just became available and we're trying to jump on it. But there are other towns, like the town of Mashpee, that does have regulations for their land subject to coastal storm flowage, and they're significant. I think they require a 4-to-1 compensatory flood risk mitigation ratio. But I think there's I don't know the answer. I'll get back to you on the other towns. I know the Mashpee is the most strict.
Okay. No, because I think that would be helpful. What you're suggesting, that this is a trend that we're going to see, but at the moment, we may end up next to Mashpee if we do adopt this being among the first.
Yeah, I think most other towns are waiting patiently for DEP to promulgate theirs first.
Yeah.
At this point, the commission feels like the development happening in our floodplain is enough, and we should have some additional regulations. Even though they're not going to be that severe, we want to be able to review those projects.
Okay, so DEP is having trouble doing their own regulations on this, I see.
They've been trying to promulgate them since 2021. I guess they were waiting for the maps as well. Now that they have them, maybe we'll see them sooner.
Yeah, no, we just had a prior discussion about DEP's problems, so we figured we'd just at least
They'll blame us.
do an inventory. Just talk a little bit about what we anticipate seeing in those regulations, a lot more definition.
Yeah, so for the vernal pools, it would be I know we're focused on the floodplain, but I'll go with vernal pools first.
Yeah.
For the vernal pools, we'd be looking at protecting not only the vernal pool, but the habitat 100 feet from the vernal pool. It would have similar restrictions as our current wetland. No new structures within 50 feet, but most parcels that have vernal pools on them have plenty of space for development outside that, and regular mitigation for any encroachment into that area. For the coastal resiliency zone, we would be looking at the velocity zone, like I said earlier, prohibiting new structures, and in redevelopment, having those structures have meet the base flood elevation or exceed it. I think it's exceeded by at least 2 feet. To prevent future loss and repetitive loss. It would be slightly less strict in the moderate wave action zone, We would still allow new development in the moderate wave action zone, but still need to be meeting that base flood elevation threshold. For the special transition area, we would be hoping to limit new septic systems and new structures at ground level. So new structures going in there would have to be elevated or pushed back.
Yeah. No, I think this whole coastal resiliency area, I think one of the things that is going to require a fair amount of education is helping people, particularly in low-lying areas, understand what's happening with sea level rise. And the fact that, Mother Nature is going to be changing our coastline in many ways, and you'll see areas that are upland under a lot of pressure to convert to wetlands. And so clearly we need to be cognizant of that. So I understand the thinking behind this, and that certainly is understood. But I would like one of those maps. Maybe everyone on the board would like one of those maps. What do you think?
I'd love to see the map, because if you're using the FEMA maps, it's science goes into it, and politics go into what's an A zone and what's a V zone. In the 44 hurricane and the 38 hurricane flooded right up to the columns and decks, and those are in A zones right now, and those actually should be in V zones. And there's a bunch along Bass River which are A zones, and should be in V zones because they flooded in 44 and in Carroll in 54.
Yeah.
So the full-size maps are available on the website, and in that GIS interactive map. I have this full-size one in the Conservation Office. I have one. I can have more printed.
That would be great. I think that would be great for the entire board. My last point, Mr. Chairman, and I'll give up the mic, is to thank you for once again, for all the work that you do. I know putting this together was not an easy job. I took an awful lot of work on your part as well as for the board, and I want to thank everybody for all the time and energy and effort in this. So thank you.
I just have a few questions. How do we distinguish a vernal pool from a, let's say, not environmentally significant flea pit? The reason I say that, I remember one of our prior conservation officers back several generations. I had a client, I wasn't really directly involved with the case, but the client had this area that just, in the rainy season, filled with water, and he said all it did was attract mosquitoes, and it didn't have any environmentally significant status. So he went to the conservation officer, and it's a true story, and he said, fill it. That was the end of it. So how do we distinguish between that kind of almost like a nuisance and a vernal pool? Secondarily, there was a famous case in, I think it was Chatham, involving vernal pools, where the guy that either owned or had an interest in the property was an attorney up there. His name was Farber, and there was some kind of frog that was a rare species that lived in that vernal pool, and that was a real big issue. And the outcome of it, there was all kinds of litigation. The outcome of it was he couldn't build there because of this endangered species that had that vernal pool for a habitat. But that's just like kind of some interesting trivia. But back to my first question, what's the distinction?
Yeah, so the vernal pool is defined, and it's defined as a basin or depression not occurring in existing lawns, gardens, landscaped areas, or driveways, which in most years holds a minimum of 2 continuous months during the spring and summer of water, and is free of adult predatory fish populations, and provides essential breeding, rearing habitat functions. So if it doesn't provide those functions and is evaluated...
Does it provide habitat for things other than mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes aren't on the list of species that required to certify a vernal pool, so those wouldn't be counted. So if it doesn't provide any habitat function and is evaluated during the time when it's full of water, it's discounted from being a vernal pool.
Okay. Now, this riverfront area, you said that the jurisdiction is now 200 feet. Is that that's under state regulations?
Yes, this is already under the state regulations. and
Normally it'd be 100 feet, right? In the absence of this state regulation?
Yeah, all other coastal resource areas have a buffer zone of 100
You're just
feet.
kind of bringing that forward and putting it into the local bylaws?
Just putting it into the local bylaw, not making any changes.
Okay. And it says, only rivers defined as perennial can have a regulatable riverfront areas. What does perennial mean? What is a perennial river?
So perennial stream must flow throughout the year except during drought conditions. Any perennial stream that's mapped on the USGS maps as perennial can be disputed if evidence is documented that it is. There are observations from a credible source showing no flow for 4 days in a 12-month period.
Outside of drought.
Outside of drought conditions.
Okay. Now, but, you know, kind of as an offshoot to some of Mark's questions in increasing jurisdiction, can you envision any more restrictive regulations added at the local level that could potentially render otherwise buildable lots unbuildable? Because as you know, when that happens, you have these lawsuits claiming there's a regulatory taking, and there's no shortage of those around.
So we are trying to avoid that in our new bylaw. Our current bylaw does not allow wetlands replication at all. And in our proposed bylaw, we will be allowing a small amount of wetlands replication if it's required to access an otherwise buildable upland of a lot. So in respect to trying to avoid that, we are trying to do that with the new regulations. With the introduction of the vernal pool and its 100-foot buffer zone, I could see how that may occur. But we are otherwise trying to avoid it within the other wetland resource areas.
Okay.
There are I think there's 9 other towns on the Cape that have vernal pools as a protected resource area, so it wouldn't be a novelty for the Cape.
The other question I had was, I forget which part of the bylaw, but there was one part that was going to allow you to look at not just present or current risks to wetland interest, but future or projected risks, so to speak. So the inevitable question that really would come up when you're looking prospectively is, what is the ascertainable standard that keeps this away from being whimsical or arbitrary when you're forecasting what those impacts might be?
So we're only using the future risks in respect to this coastal flood risk model, and we will have a defined target year. So there's an existing data set with probabilities for flooding in addition to wave depths and surface water elevations that we could be using for not only the special path of wetland migration, but for the coastal flood risk area. So it wouldn't be an arbitrary data set. It's this known data set that we would be defining, and we would stick to that.
Okay. Is there going to be any obviously conservation restrictions kind of cross over with health regulations when it comes to subsurface disposal systems. So is there any kind of forethought about contemplating potential conflicts that, again, could render a property just very, very difficult to build on, or maybe impossible to build on when you look at these new environmental regulations, and you also look at the enhanced systems that are being required by DEP?
The area where that could come into play would be if you're within the velocity flood zone and within the special transition area where we're not going to be allowing new septic systems. But if you're in the velocity flood zone, there's no new construction anyway. So it would have to be redevelopment. In that sense, a septic system would already exist and brought up to code. So that there would be a few instances where I could see that happening, but they would be very few.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dan?
Well,
Mark?
I love the ease with which you talk about this information.
Yeah,
It's pretty thick.
it is. It is. If I could, now this map that you've made available, this is a map that more or less identifies the coastal resiliency zones, right? Does it
Yeah.
identify all the resource areas that are likely to be subject to jurisdiction, or is it just?
This is just
coastal
the coastal
resiliency
flood
area.
risk area,
Okay.
so the coastal resiliency zone.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear. Now, I guess, to me, I think the area that you're going to get the most questions on and commentary on will be on expanding the jurisdiction, particularly in the, and these are the areas that are likely to be not well understood and somewhat not well defined, at least. And for some people, I'm not sure how well this is going to do. But I would say, now, for me, vernal pools is kind of a no-brainer. I can see that. I can see some of the other areas of jurisdiction. The number 6 and number 7, under 143-2, the coastal resiliency zone and the portions of land within the coastal watershed areas and the lake and pond recharge areas. I don't know what those coastal watershed areas and lake and pond recharge areas are, but, you know, when you say recharge, obviously that's important. You want to basically protect the assets of recharge in a particular watershed. That certainly makes sense. I think the unknowns relate to how does the jurisdiction get exercised, what kind of regulatory activity might occur in those areas. So I think from the public at large, when people focus on this, I think 6 and 7 will be the most challenging areas of additional jurisdiction.
Okay, I can address some of those.
Okay.
The pond recharge areas are not a new area of jurisdiction.
Okay.
They're existing, and that is the only area in which we currently have performance standards for the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And so we are keeping those. There's approximately 7 activities that are prohibited, like
Okay.
landfills.
Do you have the pond areas mapped out, actually?
Yeah, they're from a very old study from 1988, I think.
Yeah.
That's linked on our website as well. And it's just a list of 7 activities that are prohibited, and they're not going to be changed.
No, but actually defining a recharge, how does a resident of Yarmouth know they're in a pond recharge area or a lake recharge area or not?
It's the area 300 feet from a water body.
That's all, 300 feet.
I think
see.
so.
But they're not mapped out in your map. I think, just from a simplicity point of view, I think there's some people that would benefit wanting to look at a map that has identified all the additional land areas that are likely to be subject to your jurisdiction. I don't know if you can produce that, or if that makes
Outside
sense.
of this current map, I would not be able to produce that because vernal pools have to be assessed on a case-by-case basis during a very specific time of year. So we have there's a layer on the Mass Mapper GIS page showing areas that are potential vernal pools across the Cape. And that would be a good way to find out if you might have one on your property, but there's areas where could be a vernal pool that aren't mapped on there.
But I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that gets asked like at town meeting by voters. I think that's something that I think that's a legitimate ask, and if they don't have it, that might be an area of concern. I would certainly welcome seeing a map that you could say, listen, the jurisdiction is changing, there's additional land area, it's roughly 1.6 square miles, and on this map, we've identified all of the additional areas that might be subject to that jurisdiction or are likely to be subject to jurisdiction. I think that might help
Okay, I'm happy to
clarify
provide.
things. Yeah, if that's something that could be pulled together, I'd love to see something like that. But I can see, you know, if you had limited public involvement in some of your meetings, you know, I've been in municipal government for a while to know that sometimes people don't catch on to something until the very last minute. We see that a lot, and then all of a sudden the questions come out of the blue, and then sometimes, you know, you have to take a break and pause and then hit the reset button. So, you know, it's too bad that there hasn't been a lot of public engagement in this, but I certainly don't blame you. There's been a lot of other stuff going on to occupy the public's time and attention. But I do think that it's incumbent on us, if we want to get this through at a special town meeting, I would just encourage you to try to make that kind of information available to people. Obviously, you have a very good grasp of the rules and regulations. I commend you on your knowledge. I like with Selectman Horgan, I'm impressed that you can just sort of recite this stuff chapter and verse. That's pretty impressive. I don't see any crib notes over there or cheat notes. No, you seem to be able to rattle this stuff off from the top of your head. That is impressive. But that also shows you have a really good grasp of what we're dealing with here. And that's to be applauded as well. I think we are all well served by having a conservation administrator and agent that is well versed in matters like this. I think it helps us all, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
There you go. That's it. That's all I have. But thank
All right.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Presentation, much appreciated. They're doing a video, too.
That's a great idea. It's a great
Something to
idea.
get more public,
Awareness.
just transparency out there.
That's great.
You guys have any problem if we skip the final review and just move and knock out the next two items first?
Oh, if you want to get rid of staff?
Because they're short items. Bob, well, we're going to just jump ahead and do a couple of items on this agenda while we're getting ready for the warrant. Why don't you give us like the Reader's Digest version of the P&S?
Yes, we are delighted to have the purchase and sale agreement finally done on the Higgins Kroll property. Those, again, are the 10 acres which have already been subdivided out, shown as lots 1 through 10, and they were approved at town meeting. One of the things that held us up a little bit, that, you know, the title has some defects in it, and, you know, we were first putting pressure to kind of have them clear it up, but ultimately, we decided that the town can initiate a process to clear up that title better than the property owner can. And the property we had, the appraisal came in at 1.550, and as a result of the town's efforts that we're going to take to perfect the title, the price came in at $1,075,000. So that's a substantial amount under the appraised value. So, you know, we've been working on this for almost a year now, and I think town council has been like this. And I got to say that Mike's probably one of the most impressive real estate and title guys I've ever worked with. The expertise, I think, on our team was great. I would recommend strongly we purchase this for the $1.07 million, and remember that we have $600,000 from CPC, another $300,000 from the grant that we have from the state. So this is a good purchase.
And the town appropriated how much on this?
I think we had another $600,000 that we're not going to spend along there. I think that we had about, no, what did we put, $1,250,000? So there was another $300,000 from the water. So we were going to split it between water, CPC, and the state grant.
And we're coming in under.
Yeah, we're coming in way under that, like
Way
about
under.
$300,000 under the appropriation, and almost $500,000 under the appraisal.
Some issues came up, and we went back to the table, and we renegotiated this, and the reason.
I thought we had already dealt with this.
I think we did, but we just have to sign off on this now. So.
Just got to sign the
I'm
agreement.
going to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the board approves the purchase and sale agreement with the the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River for lots 1 through 10, Higgins Kroll Road, West Yarmouth.
Second.
Where's it, where do you get the lots 1 through 10, where is that?
It's on our agenda.
It's also under item 1A, certain parcel of land on Higgins Crow Road shown as lots 1 through 10 on the plan entitled Plan of Land in West Yarmouth, Mass.
Yeah, can you add where those lots are on that plan? Usually when you have lots 1 through 10 as shown on whatever the plan is, you know what I'm saying? Lots 1 through 10 on a plan.
I'm happy to say shown on a plan, but I don't have it.
Let me make the motion, you can second it, okay? I make the motion that we should execute
Oh, I
the
see.
purchase and sales
Yeah.
agreement between the town of Yarmouth and the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River with respect to the property on Higgins Crow Road being shown as lots 1 through 10 on a plan of land entitled, quote, Plan of Land in West Yarmouth, Massachusetts for John T. Wiggins, scale 1 inch equals 60 feet, July 1, 1986, Thomas F. Kelly, professional land surveyor, and filed with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 420, page 59. That's enough.
Okay, second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Okay, so let's, if it's okay with you guys, I think we'd like to, before we go through the warrant, do the next item, which is a vote, an agreement between the town of Yarmouth and the Mass Clean Energy Center with respect to that Solar Wolf project, and Bill's got this one.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, you should have and the board should have a memorandum from me dated October 13th, and what it does is outline sort of the tenets of the agreement between the town and Mass CEC. Mass CEC has made arrangements with Sun Power to create a program called the Yarmouth Assistance Program, and the second page of the memorandum outlines that program. We need to get the agreement executed before we do the outreach with everybody, because the agreement will then facilitate the agreement between Mass CEC and Sun Power. And the two entities, Mass CEC and Sun Power, are developing a program to facilitate the installation of solar panels and other systems associated with what people originally planned, and eligible participants would be the people or the households, that is, in the original program. And it's intended that they would provide a value equivalent to what people had paid towards Solar Wolf, and then people would pay the remainder to move forward. So this is a great approach by Mass CEC, and credit to them and Sun Power to put this together to make everybody essentially whole within the context of moving forward with their projects. The most important aspect, obviously, is our outreach, and we intend, with Joyce Flynn, who is here, to create a series of FAQs and other material that we would send to everybody to give them very specific information on how the program will move forward. And Mass CEC is counting on us to basically work with them to create profiles on each household and to give them the information, so the facilitation of application to the program is more expeditious. So signing this agreement will allow Mass CEC to start that process, and then you can see the responsibility of the parties. I've worked closely with Elizabeth Leiden of the Jay Tallerman's office on the agreement, and we went back and forth, and it limits liabilities for the parties, and it creates a communication system that all parties are agreeing to what is being disseminated to people to get some consistency in the program. So if there's any questions, I can answer them. Signing this will allow us to move forward and begin developing the tenets of the program and inform the residents.
Mark, do you have any questions or comments on this?
No, but you said you had, oh, this is the motion? Yeah. Got it. No, I don't. So the bottom line is we're helping make people whole.
Yes, yes, and a lot credit goes to Mass CEC and SunPower for making that happen.
Well, I'm going to also give credit to you and to Bob and to Joyce for sticking with us and hanging in there with the Yarmouth residents who've been impacted by this. This has been quite an ordeal, and it's terrific to see this all come together. So thank you all for your steadfastness and your strong and diligent advocacy on behalf of Yarmouth residents.
I mean, this is almost too good to be true. I mean, these people, the way I understand this, and my understanding comes primarily from conversations with Bill, that these people are going to be in the same position that they would have been in had Solar Wolf fully performed the contract. So to use an example, if somebody had a $30,000 project and they paid a $15,000 deposit, all they're going to have to do to get the job done is to pay the other 15. And that's the remedy in a breach of contract case. If you went to court and you went through all the trials and tribulations of litigation, you wouldn't come out with a better result than this, because the measure of damages in a contract case is to put the plaintiff in the same position they would have been in had the contract been completed. You don't get pain and suffering, you don't get inconvenience. That's not part of a contract claim. So you got a maximum attainable result already without having to go through the headache and the anxiety and expense of litigation. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion.
But I would say that it doesn't happen without having a town manager, an assistant, and active leadership in the community to help make this happen. You and I have been on those calls, and but for our team and our the support here in Yarmouth, I don't think this would have come together.
So I'm still,
yeah, I'm blown away by it.
I'm still worried that I'm going to wake up. It's not going to be true. It just, I mean, it's a. In terms of it's a maximum result, is what it is, to a problem.
And to your point, Mr. Chairman, and the boards, there will be a lot of communication with the parties involved in this. So really, this is to set an agreement between the town and Mass CEC. We'll be developing more specific information and communication to them, but we have to execute this before we start the program.
I can't think of any reason why anybody who's affected would not want to participate in this.
No, I mean, this returns them to a position, as you said, where they had the original contract. And SunPower, to their credit, has, really stepped up to, make this possible.
I mean, if you came up with a solution where somebody, that was a victim in this situation was only going to lose 25 or 30% of what they paid, I'd say that's pretty good. But they lose nothing. I mean, they get full performance, and it's an incredible accomplishment. And like Mark, I commend everybody involved in that process. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, good.
I was just going to say, it's even better than that, because the panels that they originally ordered were 335Ws in a past series, and the models change like cars do. So now even spiffier, and they'll have the 25-year warranty.
So you're going to get an upgrade in the panels?
Well, because they don't make those anymore, they make even more efficient ones. But, I mean, comparable equipment, customers will get the same wattage, but it may take up less of their roof.
That's great.
Excellent. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
yes, Mark.
I'd like to move that the Town of Yarmouth, through its Board of Selectmen, approve the agreement between the Town of Yarmouth and the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, said agreement titled Community Agreement for Yarmouth Assistance Program, as provided at our regular meeting on October 17th, today, and further hereby authorize the chair of the board to execute the agreement on behalf of the board.
Second.
Okay, and you said town council, reviewed this entire agreement, right? And
Yeah.
it's satisfactory to...
Yeah, each iteration that we worked out with Mass CEC,
Okay,
we had
great.
Zoom meetings and worked out every detail.
Great, and I know you put a lot of work in this in particular, Bill, and we want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? So it passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. And thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
We will not have board and committee actions tonight because Dorcas is not able to be here. Do we have a consent agenda?
Yes, we do, a series of
Next.
DNR shellfish regulations.
And, okay, so we'll...
Move the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passed by a 3-0 vote, 2 members absent. We'll hold off on updates just in case we have any. So that brings us back to the warrant.
Want to do the approval of minutes? Is that included?
Do we have minutes?
Yeah, we do, January 24th.
Oh, how did I miss those? Okay, oh, that was under, because I skipped that whole board and committee actions thing. Minutes. Yeah, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of
So
January
moved.
24th, 2023?
So moved, Mr.
Have
Chairman.
a second?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So that passes by a 3-0 vote, 2 members absent. Agenda review will pass on for now. And we'll go back to the warrant, the warrant articles.
I'm fine if we pass on the agenda review, period.
So let's look at the warrant articles. This says final draft 10/13/23. That should be the copy we're working from, right, Bob?
Yes, that is correct, and I just will say, the big change from the previous is, one article was deleted, the former Article 4, which was for additional funds for the DPW for gas and diesel, and they indicated that they did
didn't
not
need
need
it.
those funds at this time, so we deleted that item, and just another update that we had on Article 8, the golf, is, since we did the first draft, we received the July 1, 2023 earnings balance, so we updated that, but that's just in the explanation. Other than that, I think everything's the same.
So, let me ask the board, we're not gonna have, we normally have some time before the next annual, but I don't know that we're gonna have time to vote these articles with the full board. My recommendation would be that we vote the articles tonight, and then the ones that we want to think about or we want full board input on, we can just,
I agree.
vote from the floor, vote our recommendations from the floor, and we can discuss those at our meeting before the meeting. Is that okay with you two?
Yeah.
I think we should vote most of the articles because who
I
knows
agree.
how long it would take
No, I agree.
with
I
a full
agree.
board. So,
I agree. So I move that we recommend,
so Article 1's,
right, I move to recommend Article 1.
Second.
okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 3-0 in favor.
I move
Absent.
to recommend Article 2.
Second.
Okay, 2 is to finance the middle school for the next fiscal year.
Yep.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Same vote, 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 3 is the opioid
I
settlement.
move to recommend Article 3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Same vote, 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 4, Fire
Move to
Department
recommend.
Capital.
I move to recommend Article 4, Fire Department Capital Expense.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on 4. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes by the same vote, 3-0, 2 members absent.
I move that we recommend Article 5, police capital expenses.
Article 5, that was $23,000 for upgrade to the police station fire alarm system. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent.
I move, Mr. Chairman, to recommend Article 6, the
Article
Department of
6,
Natural Resources capital
Department of
expense.
Natural Resources capital, replace a 2013 Ford Explorer with a Ford Lightning pickup. And Dan, you second that?
Yes, I did.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? It passes by the same vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Let's go to Article 7, election capital expense of $15,000.
I move to recommend Article 7,
Second.
the elections
We
capital
have a
expense.
motion and a second to recommend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes by the same vote of 3-0, 2 members absent, which brings us to Article 8, links course at Bayberry Hills. This is a big ticket item, $3 million to pay for golf course improvements on a link course.
Do we want to wait on that one?
What do you want to do with that one?
I think in fairness to the others on the board, that may be one of a handful that we,
You think because of the amount of money?
yeah.
All right, so let's postpone action on Article 8 until the town meeting.
Yep.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, all of the capital ones went through the Capital Improvements Committee, and so we have backup information that went to them that we can send to you before the next meeting.
Right. I think on Article 9, I'd like to move that we recommend that for
Let's take a look at
construction
9. Let me look at 9. 9, construction and demolition.
area design.
Yeah, that's $138,400. Okay, you got a second on that, Dan?
Sure.
All right, all those in favor on recommending Article 9, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 10 is an ME small school repair.
I move to recommend.
Second.
And we have a motion to recommend in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 11 is a Riverwalk Park Eversource easement.
I move to recommend Article 11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend Article 11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed by a vote of 3 in favor, 0 against, 2 members absent. Article 12 is a Riverwalk Park grant. Is there a, see if telling me to see the, just to make us eligible to receive grant money?
Yes, there's a grant that was requested of $487,080. And what this does is it ties the grant directly to the reimbursement of funds appropriated at the annual town meeting from April. So what it does is it creates the wording that's necessary to get this grant, that they've already been informed they're going to be awarded, but they need this vote to make.
Oh, this is just really more of a technical article.
Yes,
I
because
think we
without it,
should
they
act,
don't
I
get
think
it.
we should act on
Yeah,
12.
I move that we recommend Article.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passed by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 13, wastewater financing. This
I
is-
move to recommend Article 13.
straightforward.
Fairly
Second.
straightforward.
Wastewater enterprise. Okay, we have a motion and a second on Article 13. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes by a 3-0 vote with 2 members absent. Brings us to Article 14, which is OPEB expenses.
I think that's a,
Transfer of free cash, the sum of $1,050,000 to the OPEB. We've had a big commitment to OPEB over the years. I don't
It's housekeeping.
anticipate any issues there.
I'd like to move to recommend Article.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passed by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 15, change the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board.
I think we should hold on that one and act on
Get
it
the
as a
full board?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Dan?
Same
All
with
right,
16.
that's fine.
Same with 16, Mr.
And
Chairman.
Article 16, yeah, because that's just the same, same
Yep.
issue in the context of zoning language. Article 17, notice of town meeting.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. I move to recommend.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve 17 and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes by a vote of 3-0, 2 members absent. Article 18 is the wetlands bylaw. Should we pass on that one?
Yeah.
Wait for the full board on that one, and 18. Okay, that brings us to,
ADUs, number 19.
yeah, should we pass on 19?
I don't know, weren't you guys pretty
Should we-
favorable last week?
Huh?
Yeah, but I think I think it deserves a recommendation from the full board for the meeting. Yeah, so all we're doing is we're holding on, what, 5 articles? Unless we want to hold on the sign one. I think we can handle that within,
signs.
huh?
We can do the same.
Yeah, I think we can. But I think we have plenty of time.
You think we should hold off on ADU?
Yeah, I think the full board should act on that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and then, so that was 8, what was that number?
That was 19.
19. And then 20,
We could do that.
20 was the signs. I think we can move on that one.
Yeah, I move to recommend
Second.
20.
A motion is second to recommend Article 20. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So that 21 becomes 20. We have to sign a warrant tonight, right?
Yes.
Or this is the drop dead date. Okay, so what numbers are we holding on?
We're holding on 8, 15, 16, 18, and 19. Those
Okay.
are the ones that we will need to discuss
And I
at our
think,
meeting.
they'll go fairly quickly, all of them, but I agree with you that they just seem to be the kind of articles you wanna get full board support on, if you can get it.
I agree.
You might have a few questions. The other thing I wanted to say is, everybody's been in the new school, right? I mean, the auditorium. We're not gonna have our little meeting place like we did, at least not that,
Better. We're
Lot-
upgrading everything.
not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's no back
Really?
room to the stage.
It's, you go in the immediate big lobby, beautiful lobby area. And directly off the lobby, so you don't have to wander around in the school or anything, there are 2 beautiful conference rooms.
Oh, is that where we're gonna have our prior meeting?
Yes.
In one of the conference rooms?
In a conference room located directly off the main lobby.
Well, when you go straight into that door, as if you're headed straight into the auditorium, there's the corridor on the left with the music rooms, and then do you go to the right?
Yes.
Go to the right. Okay.
And so, you go to the right?
There's, if you're facing the front of the building, the main entrance to the
You
building,
go in?
you go in and then the conference rooms are immediately to your right.
Okay.
But the way the building is constructed.
Auditorium, you go left, right?
Right, you go left to the auditorium.
Okay.
Now, if you face the building to the main door, what we're probably, in all likelihood, going to use to the left, in front of the auditorium, there's a separate entrance where you enter a smaller lobby that goes directly into the big auditorium.
Okay.
So if you go in that, what you want to do is you want to go right down that corridor to the main lobby, which is directly adjacent to the auditorium. So once you're in the main lobby, the meeting rooms are directly to your right. So we'll probably not go in the main door. We'll go in the auditorium door, but it's still, you
And
just
that's
go
to the left of the main, and that's to the left of the main door? The auditorium door?
it's to the left of the main door,
Okay.
a little bit stuck out more into the parking lot. So that'll be better for the public. But if we go in there, all you have to do is you just go down, there's it's a wide lobby corridor right to the main lobby. So there's like the main lobby here, and then there's a smaller lobby for just the auditorium.
Okay, good.
Beautiful design in there. And I just want to let you know, we took a complete tour with the whole technical staff with the IT people and the town clerk, and what a facility, and their capabilities there. I think people are gonna love.
Really? So Bill will be having a ball with putting his PowerPoints up on the stage with all the
Yeah.
graphics and all the other
You know,
stuff?
what I think is different, and I don't know, it just impressed me when I was there, and I was at the, quote, grand opening. It's not like Mattakese where you're looking down at the audience. You're really ground floor with them, and then the seats rise. It's kind of the reverse effect.
Much closer. I think it'll be better to interact.
It's a more intimate environment, yeah, I agree with that. So, does anybody have anything else you want to cover on the agenda? We didn't do anything with agenda review, individual items, or town administrator updates. You have anything, Bob?
I think what you need to do, I'd like to see a motion to approve and execute the town meeting warrant for November 7th, 2023.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion to approve and execute the town warrant for the November 7th meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passed by a 3-0 vote, 2 members absent. Anything else?
No, I can hold out a couple of items that, people are sort of aware of anyways. I'll just, keep the information flowing to board members and.
Okay, so our meeting's going to be at 5, right?
We're going to meet 5 PM,
Selectmen and town administrator at 5?
right, and then the town meeting at 6.
And town meeting's at 6. Okay. You have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.